But let's rewind just a touch, because I want to hear from a guy I know knows comic books about comic book movies, man, because there's a lot of them. Daniel Lewis Crumpton from downloadedcontent.com.
Am I coming across pretty clear?
You sure are.
All right, I knew my douche Spidey sense was going off. I heard somebody talking trash about the new Spider-Man Homecoming movie on the Ochelli effect. Wait a second now. Let's rewind this bad boy. And for one thing, I'm on holiday. Who of you two have seen Spider-Man Homecoming today?
Me.
I want to hear. You have. Now, what did you just say? Rewind that, Dylan.
I actually didn't say anything.
You're tired of these reboots? Did you just say something about you're tired of these reboots? I know that's kind of ham-fisted and cliche to say that it's a reboot, but for one thing, this is the Ultimate Spider-Man universe, so it's not technically a reboot if you want me to get nerd on you and everything. But please, Preacher Man, tell me why this Spider-Man Homecoming is inferior to the other Spider-Man movies, dude, because you got me in a kind of a mood, dude.
Where did I imply it was inferior? I actually said earlier it's the best Spider-Man movie since Spider-Man 2.
Play that tape back, dog. I heard what you
said. Okay, go back. Go back. You will hear me say it's the best reboot.
In his defense, it's me who's saying I'm tired of the reboots, and he was saying that this is the best one to come out.
Chuck, okay, so, all right, Chuck. Okay, do you guys read Spider-Man?
I have read a few.
I have also read a few.
The word few don't mean that means you don't read Spider-Man, dog. Either you read it or you don't. Do you read it or not?
I guess not.
Okay.
We caught you in an entertaining mood.
You cut this, and this will bleed red, white, and blue. And I ain't talking about the flag, man. I'm talking about Spider-Man, okay? Let me tell you something about Homecoming. Okay, the Sam Raimi first movie and second movie somewhat, except for Mary Jane just being a complete damsel in distress. That plot hole of the chick gets kidnapped in every movie. I mean, that's great for Sam Raimi stuff, okay?
Yep.
But the first Sam Raimi movie was excellent, okay, because we hadn't got a good chance to see Spider-Man on screen. But does it hold the test of time? And does it hold true to the spirit of Spider-Man, the essence of the comic books?
Nope.
Absolutely not. Somebody who learned to reading Spider-Man, this Spider-Man Homecoming movie, that is Spider-Man. What's the symbolic message? Whoa, no. You were trash talking some Spider-Man, dog. You done got me in a fighting kind of mood, all right?
No. So, whoa, you're going after the wrong guy. I was trash talking because
I'm getting you, Chuck.
Oh, well, then you cannot
Daniel.
Possibly defend the 1970s Spider-Man, dude.
No,
you cannot.
I'm not.
You're attacking You're going after your ally here. I really like Spider-Man Homecoming. I think Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man yet. Yet somehow I'm trash talking it.
Now you do. Yeah, that's right. No, you go back.
Go back.
No. First, rewind. It's opening night.
Okay, rewind. Go for it.
All right, look. For one thing, the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, let's just forget those two.
I actually like the first one. There's nothing redeeming about the second one, but I enjoy the first one.
You're not helping yourself here, man. But the Amazing Spider-Man 2, we had to tolerate those because, whatever. But that really wasn't, I don't really know what that was. I mean, the second one was the whole Gwen Stacy thing getting her neck stabbed. That was pretty good, decently done. But the villain, it was... But the thing is this really can't count as a reboot because what this is a folding of that character where he's supposed to be, which is in the Marvel expanded universe. So I wouldn't count this as a reboot at all. Look, between the two different studios, Spider-Man could not be on screen with Iron Man prior to Civil War. Okay? So I really wouldn't slight this for being a quote reboot.
I'm not slighting it for that. All I'm saying is my excitement for the movie was dampened by the fact that I had just watched a really bad Spider-Man movie 3 years ago.
Well, there you go. But come on, man, don't ruin it for people on opening night because I want a sequel to this one. I want And I will
You're
say,
getting a sequel to this one. It's going to make money no matter, regardless of what I say on my corner of the internet.
I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm dead serious. I mean, the entire cast. Now, I'm not even going to joke. For about the first 15 minutes of the movie, I was worried because I was like, "Whoa, they went young, like really young." Once they introduce all the characters in Peter Parker's world, it's on, man. And as far as like the symbolic element of this movie that you were looking for, Chuck, I mean, obviously anybody who's seen my Facebook wall today or the trailer, the image of him on the cross is the biggest image that you need to know about this entire movie.
How did I not see that?
How did you not see that?
I don't know.
That
I'm
he's on the
going to be
cross.
kicking myself for that.
Yeah.
So you're telling me, spoiler alert, they crucify Spider-Man in the movie, or
No,
what?
this is in the trailer. This is on all the promo art where he's being stretched across and stretched apart in the form of the crucifix between the ferry. It's a Staten Island ferry. Now, this isn't the first time they've done this in a Spider-Man movie. If you go back to 2, they did it on the train, and then all of his followers carried his body. So if you watch Spider-Man movies, you'll see the Christophany symbolism all the time, and the whole idea of, you know, whenever you're, this is Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Spider-Man just does it really, really well, which is you're young, you're gangly, you're awkward, you're not witty, or you kind of second guess yourself when you're Peter Parker, or you're Jesus of Nazareth, or you're Chuck Ochelli, or you're Dylan Wade. But when you slip into the mask of this creation of yours, of, you know, great power and great responsibility, then everything is fluent and flawless and witty and pithy, and you're bouncing off of walls. So it's the idea of self-apotheosis. But yeah, look at the movie posters when you see Spider-Man stretched out in the form of the cross.
I guess I look for the Jesus imagery in a Superman movie more than a Spider-Man movie. I must have just missed it.
No, go back and look. It's all throughout there. And as far as like, and I'll tell you another thing, man. In fact, y'all need to stop listening to the show right now. Just go see the movie, because the Sam Raimi movies, they were a little bit witty, but it was like, haha, you know, the jokes weren't that great. This movie is absolutely hysterical. I mean, Peter Parker's jokes are so damn funny. I mean, and the reactions of the other people in the movie are so funny, because it's what we're all thinking. I think Jeremy Johns did a review where he said that, where he was like, you know, they say what we're thinking, you know, in the movie. But the humor is great. And I'll tell you another thing, and I'm sorry I'm ranting, but you could tell I just got out of the theater. I'm really hyped up about it, and I'm drinking a lot of coffee out of a huge Spider-Man mug head.
I almost want to do a separate review with you that lasts like 2 hours.
Michael Keaton nailed it.
He's the best villain they've done since Loki in 2012.
Jeremy Johns made a good point. He said nowhere in this movie does Michael Keaton raise his voice. But when he's not, you know, in the suit, in the Vulture suit, let's face it, the Vulture's a stupid character from the comic books. But when you put Michael Keaton in the role of Adrian Toomes, you got a dude you don't want to mess with. That dude, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but the whole scene, you've seen it in the trailers where he turns to and he says, "Hey, if you mess with me, I'll kill you, and I'll kill everybody that you know." Man, Michael Keaton nailed it, dude. I mean, he is by far the best villain, and he's not even a major villain in the Marvel universe.
No, but
he
brought
it. He
brought it. They made him sympathetic, which Kevin Feige and all the studio heads over at Marvel look to this movie. Make your villains sympathetic from now on. Don't give us the villain from Thor 2. Oh, I'm evil because I'm evil.
Yeah, this guy you could relate to this guy, and to tell you the truth, I mean, look, in this world, Tony Stark was a damn arms dealer before, you know, he goes and joins the Avengers. So what is Michael Keaton doing? He's a contractor. And I don't want to ruin it, but this is stuff that people already know by the trailers. You know, I really don't want to ruin this movie for anybody. But you can see his rationale where he's like, dude, man, and he's trying to explain to Peter, he says, man, you're young. You just don't see how the world works. But the dichotomy,
right.
Yeah, well, he is right. But that brings out this incorruptibility from Peter Parker. But I'll tell you what, and I really don't want to ruin this, man, but the scene where he's underneath the debris. You know what I'm talking about, Dylan?
That might have been the second best scene in the movie.
That was intense.
Behind the car scene.
And that right there tells me that Tom Holland, outside of the character of Spider-Man, because I'm sorry, he is the best Spider-Man and Peter Parker to ever fill those shoes.
I'll disagree a little bit. I think Andrew Garfield was a better Spider-Man, but that Tom Holland is a far better Peter Parker than anyone else is.
All right, we'll agree to disagree, okay? But the scene where Tom Holland or Peter Parker is underneath the debris and he's screaming, he becomes the 15-year-old because he has to pretend to be a Spider-Man, but we know he's 15 years old, okay? But when he's underneath that debris and there is nobody, to me that represents, looking at symbolism, the dark night of the soul, right? The dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
when he starts crying out, dude, that actor rips your freaking heart out in a Marvel movie, man. And you almost want to get up, lift it up, dude. That's what I'll look for in a movie, man. If a movie can get me to do that, to really be moved and connect and create that emotion, that's it. And I'm not talking just because I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. Even if I wasn't a huge Spider-Man fan, this movie really makes you reflect on the inner hero, man. The inner hero.
I'm not a Spider-Man fan, and I did love this movie. I think Tom Holland was fantastic.
Okay, now we've gone over all that, and obviously we can hear that Daniel's still hyped up from having watched the movie. Okay, fine.
Dude.
But do you think that
I'm
maybe
wearing
you're
underoos
missing?
right now. I'm wearing underoos.
Listen, I don't need to know that, but you can always share that on Facebook too. That's enjoyable. That's, your fans will appreciate that. Downloaded content on Facebook. Find the page. It's awesome. You can just, watch all the wild imagery that Daniel likes to put out, and some of it is Spider-Man. So, thing is there some other stuff here, though? Is there some social programming messages? Because, I don't know, I'm hearing a lot of positivity. I'm hearing a lot of uplifting coming out of a Hollywood creation, and immediately my cynical mind kicks in. What is some of the other messages that are here? Like you said, there's this interactivity between an arms dealer and a contractor. I'm willing to bet there's some, you're completely defeated sort of things going on here, unless you're a superhero. I don't know. I'm speculating, obviously, but there's usually some dark messages that are built in. Well, yeah.
It's a dark movie to a degree, but it's also probably the most optimistic Spider-Man movie.
See, but that's on the surface.
You're talking about
there's
programming.
usually
You're talking about any kind of programming. Well, here's the way I look at that stuff. If that's what you're looking for, you'll find it. I mean, I think that if there is a commentary that it does make, I don't know if you guys have seen John Wick 1 or John Wick 2.
I've seen both. They're fantastic.
They're not only are they fantastic, but they're those two movies on second watch, if you really watch them twice, you'll find that they're extremely metaphysical and spiritual. Like, for example, did you notice, Dylan, that more so in John Wick Chapter 2, whenever John Wick and these assassins are going off and fighting each other and guns are blazing, normal people don't even react to them as if they are not there. Did you notice that?
I don't know if that's accurate. I remember multiple scenes where that's not accurate, but yes, I do remember scenes where that does happen.
It's extreme. Yeah, the motif is extremely metaphysical. You're talking about, and one of the esoteric dissections of the Wick movies that I read that I firmly agree with, because I had to pause the movie because I said something's not right here. This is not a gun fu movie. There's a deeper message. Why do they deliberately show these tattoos and the tattoo on his back that most people will believe that tattoo says fortune favors the bold? It doesn't. It says the goddess helps the strong or rescues the strong. But it's very, very close in Latin. Okay, but it shows these very, Platonic, and I mean Plato, or Homer elements, like the blood disc, okay? Things like that. And a lot of the people who have dissected it are like, well, John Wick is a creature of hell who climbed out of hell to be with his wife and then gets brought back into hell. So all these people that he's killing, they're already dead anyway. And so, sure, but it's almost like they're in the metaphysical realm with humans. So they're on a subway train. John Wick and this assassin are fighting, and sure, the people they show a slight acknowledgement of what's going on, but nowhere near what you or I would really do if that crap was happening on a train in front of us.
No, we'd freak out.
Freak out.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, these people just kind of like, oh, look at that. So it's very metaphysical. So, but there's a concept from the John Wick movies that I want to superimpose on Spider-Man, which is,
Well,
it's
hang on
this-
just a quick second, because I took that, and I know what you're talking about. It must have been the second one that I saw, and what I took it as is this: that sometimes you can witness something in the physical realm that has a lot more going on. So they might be seeing just a sort of a slow-moving fist fight, which might be common where they are, but they're not actually seeing all of the interaction that's occurring, right? So they're not witnessing it, not necessarily because these people are in a wholly different realm, but because there are things going on far beyond the perception of the witness, right? And a lot of movies have actually done that. You see that kind of thing even in, what was the movie where, Keanu Reeves is the exorcist, essentially. Constantine. You see individuals that don't react there too, people that just keep walking by even though things fall out of buildings and crash on the ground. A lot of odd stuff like that because they're simply unaware. And that could be folded into a bunch of different concepts. It could be all about the sort of a hypnotic state that most people are in, and they don't recognize the things that are really actually going on in the world. Or it could be about the fact that there's a whole lot more that is unseen that is occurring, regardless of how awake you actually are, unless you're tuned precisely into that kind of channel, right? So there's a lot of different ways to look at that, I think, Daniel.
Well, talking about the negative and the positive of it. Well, let me summate what I was saying with the Wick series. In the Wick series, you know how they mentioned being above the table or having a seat at the table, which means you're like in the Illuminati, and everybody else, like John Wick down, are under the table, right? So that in the John Wick movies, they're talking about this hierarchy in this world that most people they don't even know about. Take that same concept and with this new Spider-Man movie, and this will be a little spoiler-ish, but not so much. I'll try to be to not spoil it. Peter Parker has an opportunity to play with the big boys at the conclusion of the movie, which is the Avengers, and makes the choice to, like, he is offered a, quote, seat at the table, and because of his interaction with Adrian Toomes, or Vulture, Michael Keaton, who is more Machiavellian, I think, it doesn't come out and say it, but I think that he chooses, to not take that mantle of sitting with the big boys because of his interaction with it. Did you pick up on that, Dylan? That he chose not to join the Avengers and he wanted to remain a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, like the B-level superhero.
I did, and I read a lot of people saying they didn't like that decision, and I just thought it was strange that anybody could dislike that decision by his character.
It makes sense, but
Yeah.
to try to talk about what Chuck was saying, here's the thing, okay? With these Hollywood movies and programming, it's the same as religion, okay? And it's the Christ figure or the hero's journey. Anything can program you to be a slave. If for example, Spider-Man, if I were waiting for Spider-Man to return or waiting for Spider-Man to appear or something like that, and put this savior or hero outside of myself, then it's that movie would be programming, and that movie would be a trap for me. However, if you look at the character, whether it be Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, or Spider-Man, and you say, this is a story about me, it's really a reflection of who I really, really deeply am and have the potential to be, right? I think that's how you should approach symbolism. Symbolism is going to be all around you. It is all around you. How you really need to, how it can shift you. It isn't, it doesn't matter. The world's greatest sorcerer can put as many subliminal messages in a movie, but if your consciousness is correct, and you are the master mason of the temple of your own consciousness, it's all that symbolism is going to do is help add architecture to your memory palace. And so that's how I approach movies and books and music. I don't look for how this is enslaving me. What I look for is, how is this enhancing me to be a better person or to become my highest self? And you know what? I find it. I find it in anything I look for. Your mind is like a camera. What you focus on is what is going to develop in the picture. So for a lot of people who go see superhero movies, and they take the perception of, oh, I hope that a hero comes to save me, it's programming. For people like myself that go, okay, what can I introspectively learn about this particular tale? Because there's nothing new under the sun. All these stories is a cycle that we all go through ourselves. How can this help me in my journey? How can I become the hero of the story? Then it's like religion. Religions can either free you or they can enslave you. So can, symbolism. Symbols are neutral. It's who's using them and who's observing them. So, that's just the way I look at it. And so as far as I go, seeing the Homecoming movie, I didn't see any. For me, I didn't see any limiting indoctrination.
Okay, and I understand that, but I gotta take issue with you saying that symbols are not are neutral. Symbols are neutral. Well, not necessarily. When they're being presented to you and packaged to you, there is usually an intent behind them. And that intent is not usually neutral. People that present symbols don't usually put it out there for neutrality's sake. So there is always an intent built into these things. Now, whether you decide to accept what is being presented or not is another issue, but one can objectively take a look at the symbology, if you will, or the symbolistic aspects of it. I don't know how to even say this word correctly. The symbols that are built into something, and you can measure an intent based on what's being presented here. Okay, I understand. I think perhaps your viewpoint is a little askew because of your identification with these types of characters, and it's understandable. But I am wondering if there's some things that are built in there that maybe you missed, and that's sometimes the most dangerous thing, because there are subliminal things that are fed into a lot of presentations that come from different entertainment aspects, different media aspects that present these things that do indeed have a pretty nasty intent behind them. Whether you get affected by that nasty intent or not is another issue. But sometimes these things are slipped in under the radar. I don't know if you've ever taken a look back at a movie, that you thought was just good old-fashioned fun, all the way up until you decided to review it after your mind has been sort of educated about certain things later on in life. And then you see, wait a minute, there was a bunch of things here that I missed. And why? Because you become more aware. And you can't say, and nobody can say, that they are at the top, the absolute apex of awareness so that they catch every single thing that slid past them. I've never known anybody who could honestly make that statement. So, I'm wondering if maybe you might have missed something here because of the identification with the character, the excitement, the imagery, as per usual, the normal distractions that are put into place, the bells and whistles, if you will, that are added, by the technology that has advanced movie making and made it a whole lot more of a slick thing to do. Nowadays, I'm wondering if maybe there might have been things that were slipped in there that got past you.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, anything's possible. But here's what I do know. Is, obviously it's a Marvel movie, so you have to wait till after the credits, which, did you do that, Dylan?
Always.
Okay, so please don't ruin that for people, but that's worth it.
I haven't ruined anything for
Okay,
people.
when the lights went up, there was, because obviously it's opening day, the place was packed. When the lights went up, my mom, she went with me. There was a brand new Apple iPhone that was in the floor, right? And all I know is that as soon as the lights went up and my mom said, somebody left their phone, my first impulse was to grab the phone and quickly try to find a way to get that phone back to the person. That was, it didn't dawn on me until after we had left the theater. I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. I didn't even really, I didn't have time to process that, I don't know what you do with phones. I guess people can hack them. I don't know. I know there was no lock on it because, whatever. But I know that my first instinct, me personally, I don't know. Maybe somebody else's first instinct would be to, I don't know, jump off a freaking building. I don't know. My first instinct was to try to do something noble. So, but ultimately, I don't really believe that you have a cabal of individual people in Hollywood that are obviously they're putting messages and stuff. Duh. Okay, there's obviously that's a no-brainer. But I don't think that you have like some group of guys who are like, we're going to design this movie with all of these elements. I think that these elements crop up all around us because of the collective consciousness. I believe that that's why. That's why we're finding these concepts that are popping up in music, pop songs, for Christ's sake, in books and all these symbols and stuff. I believe it's the collective consciousness that's doing this, not like a concerted effort on behalf of a small group of people, in Hollywood or wherever. You know what I'm saying? That's just, I think that I'm a reflection of everyone and everyone is a reflection of me. And as I evolve and live in life, I know that I'm trying to live life in more joy, in more happiness, in more evolution, in more truth. And so I see that in people who are around me more and more and more. Do I see that some of them are a little bit, not where I'm at? Sure, it's my job to kind of help them along. Do I see people who have achieved greater amounts of it than me? Then it's my job to help them along. So that's just me. I mean, I'm sure that there were like 1 billion product placements for soda or
sure.
something. Got to
I
pay
don't
for the
even
movie.
pay
Man.
attention to those.
Yeah, I'm sure
Doritos bags everywhere or something. Yeah, something.
Legos. I mean, Legos was there, obviously. Star
Okay,
Wars
there
stuff.
was this really annoying product placement scene for Audi. It stuck out.
But I never would have noticed it was an Audi unless the Audi commercial had come out first. But you know what? To me, I want. I value storytelling. This is what our ancestors used to do to relay great truths through parables. And so cinema is another form of this. And, I enjoy a good story being perpetuated. So, I don't really mind so much product placement because we do live in a capitalist society. So, Coke's got to give some money to Sony or whatever to make part 2, 3, and 4. As long as the stories are good, and as long as I can take something really good from it, that stuff really doesn't bother me, man. When it becomes gratuitous and it hacks up the story, then you know what I'm saying. Okay.
Yeah, product placement in a movie I love that gets gratuitous, Man of Steel. Do you know which scene? The fight in the city?
Yeah, there was a few. There was quite a few.
In that in maybe a minute and a half, you get IHOP, Sears, U-Haul, 7-Eleven.
Yeah, but they're, but I get it.
But see, and somebody could argue too that that's just part of the visual landscape of America anyway.
I haven't seen an IHOP in
I'll put it to you this
8 years.
Let me put it to you this way. I don't know if you guys, they're filming Infinity War 1 and 2 in Georgia right now.
I'm so excited.
And there's an aerial shot of the amount of trailers for the actors. You got Infinity Wars 1 and 2 coming up. Look at the people who are in this freaking movie. Robert Downey Jr., how many millions of dollars does it cost to have him for one movie? They better be doing
million.
Heck, $70 million for one actor. Think about Scarlett Johansson.
Also in real quick, also in Georgia, they're currently filming Walking Dead too.
Yeah, I mean,
You
but
guys in Georgia got everything.
yeah, man, Georgia, yeah, I don't know who's in charge of that department, but they're doing great. All the Marvel movies are filmed here. But I mean, so they have to do product placement to pay for that stuff. And you know what? Whatever, dude. You
I
know,
understand product placement. It's just when it gets gratuitous that it pulls me out.
yeah. I mean, look, if it's just in there somewhere and it doesn't detract from the story, okay, whatever. But hey, they got to pay. Look, at the end of the day, you got to think now. Whenever Marvel Studios or Sony or Disney comes to Georgia, how many jobs do they create doing
Yeah.
those movies? So come.
No, but see, but we've actually drifted away from where it is I was trying to go after. And I'm not saying that there is a generalized cabal. There's a commission that sits down and does this. But for one to say that people do not insert their propaganda and make script changes based on what it is they want to introduce into society, I mean, that's just naive. We know that that happens constantly, whether it be for political purposes or social or otherwise. What were you going to say, Dylan?
I just was going to say that's called art, people. You can't have objective art that doesn't have an agenda behind it.
Well, not when it's being funded on such a massive scale. No.
No, period.
Yeah.
Period.
That's absolutely true, but that's the thing that I'm talking about here. I'm not saying that there's just this major cabal that produces a cookie cutter set of, this is the agenda, therefore this is the big meeting we had. 10,000 of us decided to do it because we're the movie studio controllers. I'm not claiming that there's a grand Hollywood Illuminati. What I'm saying is that there are individuals who don't necessarily have the most benevolent of intent in their heart that sometimes plant things into these presentations that are slipped right on by because they are entertaining, they are engaging, and they are comfortable. And I think that the comic book movies especially are extremely susceptible to this because they are one of these cultural comfort zones for a lot of people. I mean, how much do you look forward to seeing one of these things because you read these comic books, because you're familiar with these characters, because you played with these toys? You know what I'm saying? In other words, this is actually the right place to slip these things in. Just like when they slip certain messages into Star Wars movies or, whatever. I mean, it's because it's a cultural phenomena that is a comfort zone. So this makes it extremely susceptible to some sort of programming aspects, which don't require a lot of people to participate in, but just a few. What about that, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, but and some people think I'm a little Machiavellian on this, but all of your great mystics throughout time said, "Don't throw your pearls before swine. I have to speak in parables because they're not worthy of the kingdom of heaven yet. They're not at the point of evolution where the higher messages." If you look at between DC, Marvel, and what Universal is starting to do, the major theme in all of these big Hollywood conglomerations is metahumans, evolution, okay, hybridization, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Batman. This is starting to sound like Greek mythology.
It's all about becoming something bigger than
and look,
yourself.
if we look up at the cosmos, because flat Earth, right? We know that we're moving through the cosmos at a point of evolution, that we're getting bombarded with rays and particles and atoms that we've never been bombarded with before. We are changing, and it's coming out in our art. It's coming out in our literature. It's coming out in our music, and it's surrounding us and staring us in the face that we are changing. So I love these superhero movies because it's like, what are you going to change into? Are you going to change, the whole Civil War thing with Captain America I thought was brilliant because it tied in the ideas of freedom and liberty with this whole thing, of metahumans and evolution, and with great power comes great responsibility. So look, some people, you don't necessarily want to, I don't know, go from a double helix to a triple helix and get metahuman abilities. You just don't want that. Some people would not use it for the right reasons. I think that's what these movies are trying to tell us, and so for those who would be so inclined to I mean, all three of us, we know that we've read studies about telekinesis and telepathy and all sorts of
Hmm.
metaphysical things that we know are documented. We know these things are possible. X-Files is out telling us what's going on. So this whole thing is a conscious effort on the part of the collective to make sure that as we're evolving spiritually, mentally, physically, that we do it in a noble way. So
Mm.
that's kind of what I see with these. That's why I love it, man, because every time I go to see any of these icons, as somebody who is spiritual, I try to say, okay, what is the universe, which is everything around me, telling me about myself in this film? Who do I relate to in the story? And how can this character's journey help me in my reality and help the others around me? Okay,
Mm.
that's just how I approach it, and so I take those lessons away from these things that way.
Well, and that's probably why the most beloved characters to me in comic book history are actually, what, Punisher and Batman. Why? Because they don't contain any of the metahuman stuff, and they still achieve their objectives. They do battle with metahumans, in fact, and generally win.
Hmm.
And I appreciate that. I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm not going to evolve in this particular physical sense during this time around.
Maybe
But
maybe I'm strange, but
Well,
in the comics, I've always identified with Vision, who's a robot, and Martian Manhunter, who's obviously an alien. I don't identify with the human characters nearly as much.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, I will slightly disagree with you, Chuck, because I believe that that characters like Batman and Punisher do have a superpower, or a superpower, and it's the human will. The human will is a superpower.
mm,
You know, so and if you look at DC or Marvel, you're absolutely right. Punisher destroys everybody. Batman will destroy everybody, and they're human. But what is it that keeps them to enables them to do that? The will. The will. I believe will is a superpower.
well, you know what? If you categorize the human will, the human spirit as a superpower, then yeah, I have to agree with you. That's just the way that is. But it is the thing that can never seem to be broken entirely, unless we allow it to be broken. And it doesn't matter what you're confronted with. Even the powers of a seeming God can be defeated by that thing which was gifted to us by the source, as far as I'm concerned. So, superpower, I don't know. It seems to be a natural ability that just some people just don't tap into very often. But if you do categorize it as a superpower, I guess that's a different way to look at it. What do you think of that, Dylan?
Uh, can it really be considered a superpower if everyone has that ability?
Hey, look at Auschwitz. Not everybody has that ability, Dylan. Look at
Not
Auschwitz.
not everybody taps into that ability. I believe everyone has it, but not everybody taps into it or ever uses it.
Because you have to have the will to tap into it, right? So it's a
Mm.
catch-22, dog. See what I'm saying? So.
No, but it works, though. I totally understand where you're going with it. We're down to the last couple of minutes, and we didn't even get into the transhuman thing, which I was going to discuss with Dylan, but that's another aspect that is also being normalized, the idea of man and machine merging together. Of course, this is nothing new. Well, Daniel, a little younger than me, but when we were growing up, there was the Terminator universe introduced to us. There were other sci-fi universes where cyborgs were present, but the Terminator universe, I think, is the kind of the go-to for us. RoboCop is another one. Yeah, that was another one that was around then, but that was a little more cartoony than the blood and guts of the Terminator universe. So, although you can't argue with that scene when Peter Weller is like first assassinated from every angle possible with firearms, and what is that? The opening scene of RoboCop 1. It's probably the most horrendous single gunshot victim on screen ever. I think. I don't know. What do you think, Daniel?
Man, RoboCop creeped me out. Terminator didn't, which is weird, but looking back, but yeah. But Ghost in the Shell. I'm not talking about the newer live action. I haven't seen that one yet. But the old Ghost in the Shell with
The anime
transhumanism.
series.
Yeah, that was trippy. You know, and now finally cinema can catch up to that type of thing, and I'm glad. I think that I know we only got a second or two left, but transhumanism can be a good thing or a bad thing. You know what I'm saying?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Well, see, that was the parallel I was about to draw, is that, quite honestly, you just talked about how, superpowers, metahumans, this kind of thing, whether it is a natural evolution or an artificial introduction to it, one way or another, it's going to have a lot to do with the character of those who wield it, as to exactly whether it's a good thing, a bad thing, whether we need the Sentinels to come out and destroy the X-Men, or they are actually the very best among us, one or the other, right?
I think we're looking. I think we're looking at a split society with transhumanism. I really do. I think there's going to be an evolution of hardware and highware. There's going to be a split society, and so
I'm not clear on the definition of hardware.
I just created it, so anytime anybody says it from here on out, I get a quarter. Highware.
What's it mean?
More conscious than hardware. More evolution through consciousness than technology. Okay. Like Powder. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but
I want to see that movie.
Transcending or freeing yourself from the material world of the demiurge and Yaldabaoth, all that.
That's a great one, Powder. I love that one.
Yeah.
Never watched it. I'll have to give it a shot.
Oh yeah, I think that's where we're headed is evolution through technology and through consciousness.
Underrated. The weirdest line in that movie is he is electrolysis. For me anyway. That's kind of a spoiler, but not really, because it's totally out of context. But go ahead and watch the movie, Dylan. You'll find it very interesting. Somewhat older than some of the movies that we usually suggest to you, but I got to tell you, it's one of those things that fits right in.
Older than The Godfather?
Well, look, man, what do you want me to do about The Godfather?
I watched it already. It's fine.
Okay, good. Because I have younger people complaining because it's way too long and they drag out the story. And look,
it is quite long, but that doesn't detract from the movie as a whole.
Well, no, and there's a bunch of interesting things that emerge there that are kind of in the subtext of what's happening, but a lot of people don't understand it even to this day. One of these days I'm going to do a discussion on that film because it's not just a film about Italians. It's actually a film about America and its evolution and de-evolution in a very particular time period post-World War II. But anyway, here we go. We're just about done, and Daniel Lewis Crumpton joined me from downloadedcontent.com. Of course, that was unscheduled, but he heard us slamming a little Spider-Man and couldn't handle it, so I had to let him come on and speak his piece. And Dylan Wade, of course, we're going to continue to talk about films and TV shows and some of those other things that may contain some good and bad messages as the weeks come and go. So anything you guys want to add here in the last minute?
I got to jump, but just everybody go see Homecoming, man. Really, go see it. Just go pour your money into it. Do it. No, it's a really, really good time. It's a really good story. It's a really good movie. It's just all around good. Go see it for real.
I second that. It is very good.
See, and I haven't seen it yet, but
and Marissa Tomei is still hot. I don't give a damn.
Oh, well, look, I'm not going to argue with you there, okay?
I don't think any reasonable person with eyes can.
I'd be drinking her bath water. I don't care.
There you go. So the Ochelli effect is done for the week, and we end on the drinking of Marissa Tomei's bathwater.
Hope you all will help me welcome Daniel Lewis Crumpton. Crumpton? Am I saying that right? Why does that sound funny?
How did you say it?
Crumpton?
That's right, man.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounded weird. I don't know. I think I'm just used to messing up people's names. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Sherri. Let's pretend that we haven't spoken previously and don't speak on a regular basis as to not destroy the illusion that people who are on the radio actually exist off the radio and have lives. Have I been on this network before?
I mean, I can't imagine that you wouldn't have. I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have.
Can I drop F-bombs or?
Yeah. I mean, Lori loves it. So Lori loves it when you do that a lot. So anyway, no. Okay. Yeah, she doesn't love it a lot. So, it happens though. You know what I mean?
All right, well, I won't be too explicit. Gnosticism. Go ahead.
So, okay, first of all, let's just get started with Spider-Man, because that's been at my bit, and I know that that is the forefront of your mind right now. So let's get started on that, and let's get into some of the, first of all, explain for some people who don't know about the original story of Spider-Man, which I think is a lot of people. They know about the Marvel comics and different Marvel comics, and different things, but not the actual story that you told me the other day. And then also the symbolism throughout the movie, and then going into Wonder Woman as well, which has also come out in the last month or so.
Okay, so you know I'm supposed to be on hiatus. I'm supposed to be writing a couple of books. I'm not supposed to be doing radio, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if you want to lure me out of my bat cave, release a Spider-Man movie, I guess. I don't know. Last night, I was listening to Chuck Ochelli and the Ochelli Effect. Of course, it was opening night, and I'm a huge comic book guy, and Spider-Man is obviously my favorite. But I heard them talking about Spider-Man. And so I said, you know what? I know I'm supposed to be not doing radio right now, but them some fighting words, and they were expressing their opinions as not really Marvel fans, okay? Just, as radio personalities, I suppose. I don't know. I know Dylan's pretty young, and he has not been reading Marvel comic. Well, they both said they don't read Marvel comics, okay? So they...
What?
Yeah, they said they've read a few, which means they don't read Marvel comics, because you can't do that if you're a Marvel fan. You know what I'm saying? You can't.
It's like a series. It's like Netflix. It's like when you're watching those Netflix episodes, that's what the comic books are like.
Yeah, so anybody who says I've read a few, that means they don't read Marvel comics to me, okay? Because every single issue is a cliffhanger. You have to pick up the next one, or you don't even know what the hell's going on. So they were speaking as not comic book people, okay? But and here's the thing, man. When I go and look at movies, I like listening to people do movie reviews, and me being into the occult and everything, and the esoteric and Gnosticism, I also enjoy dissecting movies too, okay? But you'll find that a lot of people who have platforms out there on YouTube and internet radio and stuff like that, they piggyback off of other reviewers and stuff and kind of say, well, what can I say that's really deep or really different or really controversial about this movie just for the fucking sake of doing it? And sometimes I don't think that's necessary. Now, I'm not talking about Chuck and Dylan there, but I'm talking about in general, like everybody in the alternative media, if a Hollywood movie comes out or a celebrity does something like with the pyramid or the one eye, they all jump on it like it's Illuminati symbolism and it's brainwashing you. And I'm like, dude, man, come on, man. You got like 100,000 views. If the Illuminati was putting like a symbolism in there, or there was a cabal of people putting symbolism in there to brainwash you, you wouldn't even be doing a fucking video about it, okay? It wouldn't be on the radar like that. So if you're picking it up to begin with, that means that you're supposed to make a notation of what it's saying, okay? So let me just preface that. So if I'm going to talk about Spider-Man, first, have you seen it? She's on mute. Sherri, did you go to see it, like, right now?
Sorry, no.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to leave and go and make sure that I was up to date. No, I didn't go see it. I do have a pretty clear idea of it, not because I saw it, not because of the trailer, but because it is very vivid in your mind, I'm just going to say.
Mm-hmm.
But please go ahead. I want to hear a little bit more about the storyline, and I want to see how it relates to what you told me yesterday before seeing it.
Do you care if I spoil it? Or do we want
I don't care.
Okay, well, I may, for anybody listening who hasn't seen it, I may spoil some things here. I'll try not to, but if you haven't seen it and you don't want spoilers, I probably would suggest listen to this later down the stream. But everybody knows kind of the story, overall story of Spider-Man, and it's his motto, or the motto that comes with Spider-Man, which is, with great power comes great responsibility. And that is what defines the character of Spider-Man or Peter Parker, both, and it's not a new thing. Stan Lee, he worded it that way when he created Spider-Man, But I mean, you can find that particular motif in the Bible and in the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita. You could find that everywhere. That with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Right. Okay. So that's, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was getting lost there for a second thinking, I thought I missed. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So for you, to try to give you kind of a background, Peter Parker is a kid. He's a teenager, about 14 or 15 years old, who lives with his uncle and his aunt, and that's kind of his parental figures, his what do you say, his role models for God, right?
Just so we're clear, Daniel, I do read Marvel.
Oh, okay. So you know this story then?
Yeah, I know the story, and I know the story really well, but I have not seen the movie, and so that's why I wondered if they followed along that storyline, or did they add in what you and I had talked about yesterday?
Well,
you know what I mean? Go ahead.
With this particular movie, because every time they've done a Spider-Man movie thus far, they've had to show us the origin and the death of Uncle Ben, all right? And that wasn't really necessary. Everybody knows the story. So with this particular Homecoming, it doesn't ever really it only vaguely even mentions that. It just starts off with a kid in high school with spider powers. You've already kind of seen him in Civil War, right? So it's past the origin. We don't have to do all that crap again. Okay?
Right, okay.
Now, as a fan, for one, let me go ahead and say this is the best Spider-Man movie ever, okay? I love the original Sam Raimi movies. I loved them because, well, it was the best that we could get. But Sam Raimi was a old school fan. He liked the Spider. He actually had it in his contract or something that he would not have any characters past like 1979 or something like that in his movies, which sucks because I'm an 80s kid. So, I was reading the 80s comics when I came around to comic books. So I was content with Spider-Man with Sam Raimi because that was the first time that you actually got to see Spider-Man on screen. And then with the two in the middle there, the Amazing Spider-Man, I really don't like talking about those two. I don't want to take a dump on them, but that really wasn't Spider-Man, okay? That was Sony trying to figure out how they could market the most marketable superhero of all time without the Marvel Cinematic Universe that most people know about, that has all of the superheroes together like Thor and Iron Man and Hulk. Well, it's kind of hard to do Spider-Man isolated because Spider-Man's comics are very interwoven, like a web, with the other characters, okay? Because, and why people relate to Spider-Man is because Spider-Man is us. He's the everyman, right? But he lives in a reality where there is the Avengers, these gods amongst men, right? And, like, if you were to put Spider-Man with his powers in the ring with, say, the Hulk, you know who's going to win. The Hulk's going to destroy him, right? So, Spider-Man is kind of the bridge between us and the gods in the Marvel Universe. And that's just me kind of, putting it out there. That's my opinion. He's the bridge. He's got some super abilities and whatnot, but he actually has to worry about things like maintaining his secret identity, for one, to keep, and the whole motif of superheroes is very relevant to a spiritual journey, because you walk a thin line between the identity that you were born into or that the world has given you, and their expectations, right? You go to work, you clock in, you have to work with these normal people in a normal environment, but somewhere deep down inside of every one of us, we're waiting for, quitting time so we could put the mask on and be who we really are, right? Be the hero within us. We're waiting for that time away from a machine, a world of mundane cares and worries, right? Like in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, when you see Tony Stark never is not Tony Stark. Everybody knows Tony Stark is Iron Man, and he's a multi-billionaire. He doesn't have to worry about rent. He doesn't have to really worry about relationship issues. He doesn't have to worry about, turning in a test on time and things like that. Does that make sense? Muted.
It does make sense. It does make sense. I think that, if I'm understanding, basically, from your perception, and I think you're right, is that pretty much Spider-Man, even though he has these grand abilities, is still more human than these, say, demigods maybe that are on Earth. I mean, Iron Man and different things, even though they're considered superheroes, if you know, which we're going to go into later, but when you start going into the Gnostic understanding of things, that's a term, the demigod and the
Demiurge.
Demiurge. Oh God! Now that's like this whole. It's pretty exciting. So that's kind of a definition, in my opinion, of what they're explaining. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and let me say this, because this came up on Chuck's show last night, is when you're of a Gnostic point of view, and let me get into Gnosticism for just a minute. Gnosticism is not a religion. Gnosis, it means, to know firsthand experience, all right? I've heard other people, they're internet gurus and stuff, say Simon Magus created Gnosticism, and that's ridiculous. It's stupid. Gnosis is firsthand experiential knowledge, okay? So there is recorded history of firsthand experiential knowledge well before Simon Magus. So the whole idea that he created Gnosticism is stupid. And you may find gatherings of Gnostics, but there's like no first church of Gnosticism. You'll never really find Gnostics debating one another about theology, because it's kind of self-defeated. Gnosticism within itself precludes doctrine and dogma, as far as church doctrine, because the whole premise of Gnosticism is your personal experience is the reality of the physical and the metaphysical. So if somebody else has a distinctly different personal experience, you can't tell them that it's not true, and they can't tell you that yours isn't true. Okay, all you could really do in Gnosticism with that type of thing is compare relatable experiences. Like, for example, people who've had visions or left their body and gone to different realms, say the Archon world or whatever, they can describe it, and then you can go, when I went there, that's what I saw too, right?
Now, a lot of people, wait a second, because you mentioned the Archons, and so this is something, I think a lot of people have confusion about who and what the Archons are, and you did a breakdown for me at one time, and I don't know if this is where you want to go into that or not, because we're kind of getting distracted off of the symbolism from the Spider-Man show, but it really helped me in the breakdown with Source, the Aeons, the gods, the chief chaos rulers, the cherubim, the seraphim, archangels, and you broke all that down for me in a way that I was able to understand better what levels and where we're at and where these other things that you're talking about are at.
Okay, so
you're talking about Archons, like most people don't even really, most people in my opinion think that Archons are the reptilians.
No, they're not. I mean, if you want to believe they are, they worked with them, but Archons are separate. And like I said, you can. Me and you were talking off air, so I'm gonna. Some of this people who are listening may get, and some of them they may not get. What we were talking about was when me and you first started talking. Period. I had said, Sherri, as a witch, I have to urge you, if you really want to take your craft to a new level, read the Bible. Read from cover to cover, okay? And yeah, you laughed about it at first, but then over the past couple of years, you've been like, wait a minute, okay? Well, of course, as a Gnostic, I do not adhere that the 66 books of the King James Bible is the complete canon, okay? I don't believe that, and I think it's really anybody who does any type of research, it's evident that the 66 books are not all of what is there for us, okay? Even, you can get Gnostic theology, so-called, from the 66 books. It is there, but it's there for the seeker to go, wait a minute, there should be more books in this collection. There should be the Book of Enoch. There should be the Book of the Watchers, the Book of the Giants. There should be the Gospel of Thomas. There should be Epistis Sophia. There should be the Gospel of Truth. There should be a Gospel of Judas. Okay, even the Bible itself says that if there were books written about everything that Yeshua the Christ did, it'd fill up the whole planet. So how in the world can you expect to limit your understanding of what the message of the Christ was with 66 books that was chosen by Constantine and a handful of his council, okay, a political group that knew that they were collapsing and had to quickly evolve into a religious church, had to make some compromises with their theology, but at the end of the day, politics is still about controlling the masses. So you have to do just enough, and of course how you keep slaves in servitude is by ignorance, right? And I haven't heard any other Gnostic talk about this, but in my opinion, all sin, okay? And when I say sin, I don't mean sin as a laundry list of don'ts and do's, right? That's what a lot of people believe about the word sin. Sin, it just means to fall short of perfection or divinity. That's what sin is, okay? And so what I always say is all sin or all things bad come from ignorance. And if you stop and let that sink in for a minute, okay, all bad things come from a lack of knowledge. And the Bible even says that. It says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. And so, like if I were to go to a pharmacy, a big pharma place, right, and look at the patients there who are waiting for their blood pressure medicine, their antipsychotic medicine, their heart medicine, all this big pharma. They may be the greatest people in the world. They may have hearts as light as a feather. They may, do no harm to anybody else, and they are, through ignorance, participating in an industry that is killing them, and they don't know. Ignorance. And so therefore they are sinning through ignorance, right? So ignorance or lack of knowledge is where you screw up, right? I don't know how I got off on that. You there? Did I lose you?
No, I'm here. I'm listening.
Okay.
And because I think that's where it takes my mind, I guess, and how I think we got on this is that the explanation of where and how the Gnostic idea or where it comes from, like you're saying, it's not a religious base. It is the bringer of knowledge. It's the knowledge of our time, of the before times, of all times.
Yeah.
And so what I think is fascinating about that is that, again, in the Marvel comics, they do a lot of what do you call that when it's, they don't say it outright, but they
Parabolize, allegorize.
Yes, all over the place with this, right? Because, like you just said, you've got Iron Man, and then you've got, but above him, you've still got the so-called the gods, right? That are giving these powers to these humans for whatever reason, or they're aliens, or they're from outer space, or there's something chemical. I mean, there's something that's being injected or induced into these humans to give them the superpowers that, at some point throughout the movies or throughout disclosure, they're letting people know that these are the capabilities. Do you think that's true?
Okay, and I talked about this last night, and so I'll try to summate what I was saying last night. You are gonna find if you're into Gnosis, and keep in mind Gnosis is the beginning. It's the beginning of a journey. It's not the end. Gnosis is where you start. But when you are on the path of Gnosticism and you look around, you start to see elements of the Sophia myth, the myth of the demiurge, the myth of the Archons, the myth of creating or cultivating a soul beyond your spirit and all that. You'll see it in movies, you'll see it in music, you'll see it in books. And so all these people on the internet that we were talking about earlier that are flipping out saying, it's an agenda. It's the Illuminati that are doing this, that are putting these in movies. Look, there may be a few Gnostic who proclaim to be Gnostics in Hollywood doing that, and I'm sure that there are. There's no doubt that the Matrix movies were deliberately teaching Gnosticism. But then you'll have movies like Spider-Man or any of the Marvel movies where you can see it. But me personally, I don't believe that there's like a secret conspiracy of Gnostics to take over the world, and they're doing that. What I believe is, because I believe in the myth, I guess you would say, of Mother Sophia waking up to consciousness, Mother Gaia going through a comatose period throughout time, and there being a period which is now where she wakes up and her children begin to wake up, as Led Zeppelin would say, the children of the sun, okay, the little eyes of Horus. That there
No,
would
wait,
be this.
did you say, okay, I want to jump in here because I've done lots of shows on the frequency of the planet, and one of the things that I just heard or that my understanding is Sophia being not just the Aeon that fell, but also she actually, when she fell into the lowest pit of chaos, somehow became the earth. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, that's a one strand of belief of it. Yeah, one of the let's see, is it the Pistis Sophia and the Gospel of Thomas will give you slightly different versions of the material world being created. Okay, they don't really contradict each other, I don't think, but it's just different details. But anybody who doesn't know, who hasn't read Pistis Sophia, I recommend that highly. And essentially, where me and you were talking about the different hierarchies above what Christians would believe, which is you have angels, archangels, seraphim, cherubim, and then this male God figure, this God the Creator. Okay? Well, in Christian theology, Islamic theology, and Jewish theology, that's where the hierarchy kind of ends, right?
Right.
Gnosticism opens up a doorway of way more levels to creation. And beyond the male creator God of the material world, you have aeons, gods, rulers, chiefs, and then of course beyond the aeons is the treasury of light, or the what's called the great forethought. Okay, the cosmic. It's the source. It's the non-dualistic underlying creation of all that there is. Which, when people say God, that's really what they're trying to think of, the source, okay? However, I don't like to really refer to God, because instantaneously when you say God, in the collective conscious mind, you picture a Zeus-looking dude, okay? Well, in Gnostic texts, that particular figure is called Yaldabaoth, or the demiurge, okay?
That's where I wanted to go. Okay. Yeah.
So,
okay. Yeah.
where does that guy come from in relation to Sophia? Well, what the Pistis Sophia says is that Sophia is one of the 12 aeons. And keep in mind, aeons are above gods. Okay? And in the text, you have to really look at the context, because the word aeon can refer to an entity. It can refer to a region of physical or non-physical space, which that's a little nosebleedy, non-physical area, or a period of time. Okay, so you have 12 aeons that are close to the Most High, the creation source. And Sophia, which means wisdom, is a feminine aeon, and it does indicate that she's relatively new. She's a youngster, and she, unlike the other aeons who are very content with where they're at in the cosmos. I mean, they're aeons. They're above everything except for the source itself, so they're cool, right? But Sophia is different. And Sophia has this aspiration she believes it's possible to be one with the light, right? To have an intimate, it's very romantic. It's a very romantic story. She believes that it's possible that you can have an intimacy, or in, I think it's Greek or Hebrew, I don't know, koinonia, with the creation, okay? And so I kind of picture it in my mind as, while she's doing her aeon type work, which is creating, she is kind of always distracted by this fantasy of being one with the light, right? And the other aeons are like, who the hell does she think she is, man? Who does she think she is? She thinks she's so high and mighty that she could be one with the light and all this good stuff. So there is a conspiracy amongst the lower entities and some of these aeons that are jealous of her. That, depending on which text you read, you'll get different angles of the story. But they trick her by simulating something that looks like the light from the Great Treasury in the lower parts of what's called chaos. Okay, or the material realm that we are born into, all right? And the only moment of pride that Sophia really has is when she looks down into chaos and sees it. She goes, well, wait a second, if I can go and obtain the light that I see down there, maybe then I'll be worthy enough to go into the great treasury of light, right? Okay, so the text, even though we say that Sophia fell, that's a little parallel with the fall of what people call Lucifer. Of course, Lucifer's not what Christians say, obviously. Lucifer isn't the devil or Satan, all right? Lucifer means the bearer of the light bearer, Venus. So in a way, Sophia is Lucifer. She was, she's a light being. So she left or fell out of her position into the lower parts of existence, which is the material realm, chaos. This is where we're born into, right?
And now wait, I'm sorry, but I need more definition on this because there's different levels of chaos, which I couldn't find. Well, I didn't have time to really look into it. So there's different, it explained, or it said that there were different levels of chaos and that she went into the deepest level of chaos, which is actually then where evil was created. Does that explain that? Or am I repeating that wrong?
Well, whenever she fell into the material, she fell into, because now, and keep in mind, what the texts also say is that these entities, aeons and gods, it doesn't indicate that they're omniscient, okay, or omnipotent. Actually, the Christian Bible says that there are things that God does not know, okay? So even the Christian Bible, it doesn't say that God is omniscient or omnipotent, okay? So let's go there. But basically, according to the text, when Sophia went into the material universe, there's two different opinions on how Yaldabaoth or the Demiurge came about. One is that Yaldabaoth was a result of her fall. But I think the Gospel of Thomas, actually there's one called the hypostasis of the Archons is a Gnostic text that specifically deals with the Demiurge. Don't be confused. Demiurge is Yaldabaoth, is the god of the Old Testament. Same guy, okay? That she, in an effort to mimic the Creator, created Yaldabaoth. And the minute that she created Yaldabaoth, she realized that this was not a good thing. This was bad. This was a bad idea. She could sense that he was going to be, a masculine dominant entity. And so it says that she casts him off into a part of chaos and set a cloud around him. So that whenever Yaldabaoth, this male Zeus-looking god, came into consciousness and he looks around, he doesn't see the other aeons. He doesn't see Mother Sophia. He doesn't see the gods. And so he believed that he was the only God. And so when you look in the Old Testament and you see this guy saying, I am God and there is no God beside me, that's Yaldabaoth talking, okay? And furthermore, and this right here gets me, when Christians come near me or anything like that, and I'm talking about Orthodox Christians, this question that I often have for them really, really sets them off, and they don't like it. And it's, look, here's what I know. When you go to Genesis chapter 1 and you read, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, I know that if you look that word up, or if you ask any Hebrew scholar, they'll tell you that the word that created is Elohim. The Elohim created. And that it's plural. And that it contains a masculine and a feminine. Okay? Multiple. It doesn't specifically say this many males, this many females. But you have to have more than one, and you have to have masculine and feminine. That is the creator. Okay? In the beginning, the gods created the heaven and the earth. That's what it says. Any Jewish rabbi will tell you that. I also know that when you get to Genesis chapter 2, you have this guy walking around in the garden with Adam and Eve called the Lord God, which is a singular masculine entity. Okay? So this is distinct from the Creator God. This is an individual entity calling itself the Lord God, or Adonai Jahaveh. Okay? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but I guess I'm kind of, when you're talking about, give more definition, please, as to who Elohim is, because I think I feel lost in that a little bit.
Elohim, by my interpretation, is the aeons. The aeons where Sophia originally came from, the creators who live in galactic center, and they are outside of time and space. It's the gods, plural. Council of the gods, whatever. It's more than one. It's the aeons of Gnosticism, okay? Echoed by Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Hindu mythology, all that good stuff. It's the creators, right?
Okay.
They're
Okay.
light beings. So
Okay.
in Genesis chapter 1, and like I've told you privately, in the original readings of the Bible, there is no chapters and verses. That's just so that we can read. So if you were Hebrew and you were reading it, you would know, you would not be confused that the gods created the heavens and the earth, and then this guy named Adonai Jahaveh is in the garden walking around in a physical body. You wouldn't be confused. And so you would know that this guy that says don't eat of the tree is not the creator previously, creators previously. If you were Hebrew, you would have no problem with the rest of the Bible. But because of the English translation and all that, and I'm a King James guy, I love the King James, it's a brilliant book, so I'm not anti-Bible. Because the word God is through indoctrination invoked this singular masculine thing, Christians are given the Bible, or they pick up the Bible, and they read, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and they automatically think of Zeus. And that's by design. They don't realize it's gods.
Okay, so one more question about that, because I've talked about the rape culture and how our society went into this masculine idea of take what you can get. It doesn't matter where or how you do it. Just take it if you want it.
Mm-hmm.
The narcissistic idealist, which is also created in that time. Is that right?
That's what the Gnostic texts say in regards to Yaldabaoth, or the demiurge, the Old Testament God, basically rapes Mother Sophia to create Earth, the humanity. It's called it says fornication in the Gnostic Gospels, but the principle is he creates the Archons, and as a means to rape Mother Sophia of light. Okay, so what the Archons are is, I just tell people watch Star Trek, and if you really want a good idea of what these things are, the Pistis Sophia calls them emanations of Yaldabaoth, or the self-willed God. Okay, they're like bees. It's a hive. It's a collective consciousness of artificial intelligence. Now this is written in
You're talking about the Borg from
Borg. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is in texts that are like 2,000 plus years old, talking about artificial intelligence. And there was a scientist in the 30s or 40s in Australia who, through what's called abiogenesis, he took some lead filings and put them on a plate or something and charged it with electricity, and these lead filings they metamorphosized into mites right then and there and flew away. So this isn't science fiction, this is fact. So what the texts say is that Yaldabaoth, the self-willed God, began to create things, and one of the things that he created was the race of Archons. Now, Archons, they lack empathy, okay, and they lack imagination. They do not have the power that we do to create, okay? Now, that being said, they can manipulate what is created, and they do a very good job of it. So they can manipulate reality, but they cannot create in the way that we can.
So those are that's the Illuminati today, the bloodline of the Illuminati, right?
I would say that there are human beings, that serve the Archons or served the Archons, because in my estimation of things, the Archons are no longer an issue, but just for the sake of history. There are human beings that, for power, wealth, money, and all that good stuff, tapped into a channel to communicate with the Archons for whatever it is, material things they wanted, and work for them. They took the name Illuminati. I think that's a bastardization. I am in the Illuminati. Okay? You are in the Illuminati. Anybody who is illumined or enlightened or has a light essence is Illuminati. Okay? A bunch of bankers, that's not the Illuminati. They have taken the name Illuminati, but it's not theirs. Okay? They've just inverted it. Okay?
Inverted. Don't forget to talk about the polar opposite of everything on the planet, because I think that's that'll take us back into these Spider-Man and some of the Marvel comics, because they show so much of that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's important, because that's this world. I think everything I'm understanding now from the Gnostic point of view, or the education that I'm getting, is that pretty much everything you believe to be true is the opposite.
Yeah, a good bit of it, yeah, or you're looking at it the wrong way. But so getting back to the Archons, basically what these Archons did in the myth was, okay, and everybody's going to have to use their imagination. Picture Sophia as a light being. She's brilliant light, okay, and she falls into chaos, and of course this has never happened before, so she's in great distress. When she falls into chaos, Yaldabaoth comes about. Yaldabaoth sees this light as a resource, okay? This is fuel. It's like oil for Yaldabaoth and the Archons.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, essentially, Sophia realizes her mistake when she fell. And the Pistis Sophia records 12, I'm pretty sure it's 12, it may be 13. It might be 13, so don't quote me. I know it's more than, it's at least 12. She cries up back up to the Most High. You know, these long, beautiful songs of repentance, begging for help. Okay, and while she's doing that, the Archons surround her like a hive of bees, and they are sucking the light from her. So her light is diminishing, and these Archons are storing this light in chaos for purposes of running their civilization. So as above, so below. As within, so without. We are physically standing on a Mother Earth, and we, not all of us, but humanity has been raping Mother Earth of resources. So as below, so above. The Archons, this advanced race, was feeding off of Sophia's light, okay?
Right.
For purposes of running their civilization. This is about survival, okay?
Same now. Imagine that.
Same as now. And so, because people think that, like Orthodox religious people, they're like, well, the devil wants your soul. Well, what's he going to do with it? They never tell you that. Well, he's just doing it to get back at God. That's not why the, quote, devil wants your soul. Okay?
No, and this was another question about the soul and about all of that, is that, so I've always been taught that the fear of, like, so when you put a soul into fear, or when you put that energy into a higher vibration, it's called a loosh. But in the Gnostic reading, they said that's bullshit.
Say what now? Repeat that.
The loosh. They were talking about how, basically, so like these dark, how you feed an Archon, or how you feed these dark energies on a massive scale, is through the black magic, in my opinion. And by using black magic, the reason that they use children and they use really gross methods of fear is because it rises the loosh within the being.
I've never heard that word kind of used in context, but the principle that you're talking about, yeah, that's right. Which is,
they said that it was, here's the thing about it, right? So they said, the Gnostic reading, if I'm understanding it right, they said that the loosh was made up, that really what they're feeding, it's like they're courting to us. And so even though they have us manipulated and thinking that we are enslaved to them, if we really take a look at the overall picture, they are enslaved to us, because they have no other feeding sources besides us. They have left themselves completely open to a lack of resources and have not done any of the work or any of the things that they needed for themselves.
Right, and the Matrix movies makes that real clear. The Archons don't hate us. We're plugged into them just as much as they are plugged into us. It's symbiotic, okay? However, as it stood, the Archons feed, or what powers their sails, is negative human emotion. Trauma, fear, worry. That's an energy source that they've harnessed that powers their civilization. Okay, so it goes for people who hunt deer and stuff like that. You don't hate the deer or you don't hate the fish. It's just purposes of survival. right? And so through that being their oil, they do all sorts of things to traumatize us individually and on a collective scale. So yeah, I mean, our negative emotion is their food. And people say, well, you could. It's somebody who like you like to talk to people about being generators of energy.
Right.
And me and you have in private sessions, you've clearly identified I'm a generator.
Right.
And I'm a huge generator. I generate massive amounts of energy, especially if you're in physical proximity to me. Somebody like me, if I were to succumb to Archons or Archontic influence, they would, man, they invite their friends. I'm a buffet, right?
Well, and that's part of, so in learning and understanding the rising of the Kundalini,
Mm-hmm.
of the energy mass, of astral travel, of dimensional reality, of raising the vibrational conscious levels within yourself, it does, the higher your frequency goes, the better feeding ground you could be, I guess. And so when we're talking about, and I've done shows, and I know you know about like the gang stalking, how there's these beings, or there's earth or people, and maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not, maybe it's whatever, but that actually are they're feeding the Archons through the things that they do.
Mm-hmm.
Right, on a massive scale. It's like, so that would explain more, in my opinion, the frequencies that come through the television, that come through the internet, that come through the iPhones, that come through, that change and affect people's emotional levels.
Mm-hmm.
If you could do that on a mass scale, isn't that a feeding of the Archons? I mean, like, talk about serious buffet, right?
Well, look at 9/11.
Yeah.
And look at all the trauma that resulted from 9/11 in the collective consciousness. Massive amounts. And I think that the reason they did 9/11 was because, I mean, look, you can see in the heavens that there was a period that was about to happen. My belief is it started December the 21st, 2012. We went, above the ecliptic and then all that.
Right.
It was a last-ditch effort. And to try to get as much energy as they possibly could for reserves. Now,
Exactly.
like an arc. And why I say that is, if you look at Pistis Sophia, whenever she cries out her seventh repentance to the Most High, right? Please help me, help me. It talks about the Christ figure, who we would call Jesus or Yeshua or whatever. This is pre-Garden of Eden, by the way. Is given permission to go down into chaos and briefly help Sophia by lifting her up from one part, which is lower of chaos, into the higher parts of chaos, okay? Well, whenever the Christ hero does that, the Archons flip out. They're like, what the hell? And for a minute, they're disoriented. And it basically, and I'm adding my own illustrations to the text, you know what I'm saying? My own, obviously you have to. It's a very imaginative book anyway. But the Archons flip out for a second because they're like, whoa, we thought this was a feeding frenzy, but now it's like an oil shortage, And it says that they have to go up and surround her again because they were afraid that she would be completely taken out of chaos. So you got to think, Sophia is the light. The light almost escaped chaos, which means if she's gone, they have no more fuel. They have no more oil. Now they have to start fracking what they already had, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of what the Archons are. They feed off of the light of Sophia, but of course
And now, wait a sec, because, okay, so here's the other part of this that I am finding fascinating. It's because I've also studied a lot of the Luciferian belief, and I'm not talking about Satanism because it's very different. Mm-hmm. But I've also studied some of the Satanism ideals through Aleister Crowley, which is just, anyway. But it breaks down with the Luciferians. They believe exactly what you're saying, but as opposed to it being in the form of Sophia, it is the form of Lucifer that she transformed into when she hit the bottom levels of chaos. Or I don't know, transform is that's, I made that up. That was my word, because that's how I saw it, but maybe it was a merging or something. explain that, or what do you know about that?
Well, some people would say that the serpent in the garden was Lucifer, the light bearer. And there are schools of Gnostic, because there are different schools of Gnostic, people. Like I'm a Sophian Helio-Christian Gnostic or whatever, okay? But you'll have different people with different interpretations of those texts, and that's fine. But there are some that believe that when Sophia saw mankind in the garden in a state of servitude due to ignorance, that she wished to intervene because basically Adam and Eve were, or Adams and Eves, that, there are people who have different theories on if it was two individuals or a people. I don't really care. It's whatever. I wasn't there. I don't know. But Sophia, the goddess of wisdom and light, saw that there were these sparks of light that had come from her, so essentially her children, that were trapped in the material realm. And
in chaos.
In chaos. And this is where reincarnation will kick in. That's just recycling of the light, of the energy. Okay? And so she wished to help humanity escape the trap of chaos and ignorance. And so she took on the form of a serpent. And in the garden, she becomes Lucifer, the bearer of light. But Prometheus is Lucifer. Anybody who brings you enlightenment is Lucifer. So there are many Lucifers, but Luciferians will say that. They'll say that the serpent was Lucifer. Now, here's my question to Orthodox religions about that. Look, you got 4 characters, if we take this literally, 4 characters walking around that garden, right? Or, walking around. Adam,
Okay.
Eve, the snake, and this character called God. Okay?
Right.
When you go forward in the New Testament, you'll see that Jesus is describing the adversary and says that the adversary was in the garden and he was a liar and a murderer from the beginning. Okay? Right? So now...
Now the interpretation of that would be the serpent, but in what I've learned, that's not true. So explain that more.
Well, this is simple. We don't have to even... this is a simple thing. So if Jesus said that whoever this adversary is was in the garden, we got 4 suspects. All we have to do is figure out which one lied like a motherfucker. Okay? So which one lied? You had the serpent that said, you're not going to die and your eyes will be open. You'll be as gods. Okay? Now we got this God figure that says, in the day that ye eat thereof, ye shall surely die. Who lied? Who told the truth? And who lied? Okay?
Right.
The snake told the truth. Ye shall not die.
Weird? Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
What'd you say?
I said, "Ooh, weird," but I was just being sarcastic. Go ahead.
So the serpent told the truth. Okay, right there, and I know there's probably no Orthodox Christians listening, but right there, they're all, he's a Satanist, he's a Luciferian. Well, I'm just pointing it out, dude. The snake didn't lie. Okay, did they die the day that they ate thereof? No, they did not. And Christians get on me because they're like, well, they died spiritually. Shut the fuck up. That God character said, ye shall surely die. He didn't say spiritually. And then, of course, they've came back and they've said, well, the relationship between them and God was never the same. Well, that's not death. I've pissed off people in my personal life and had a different relationship. I didn't die. Okay? So who lied? And who told the truth? So who brought the light of enlightenment and who was trying to keep them in ignorance? Now, I find that this God of the Old Testament, I don't see how you could say, I want you to remain ignorant and not know about things. And then in Proverbs and in Psalms, will sit there and say, it is the honor of God to conceal a matter. It is the glory of kings to search it out. This other God, this source creation God, wants its creation to evolve and learn, whereas this character in the Garden of Eden does not, right? So when you take that and you look at scriptures where it says, I am God, I am the same yesterday, today, and forever, and then you find conflicting or contradictory traits, such as one of these guys walking around saying that it's God, wants liberty and freedom and intelligence and evolution, and this other one wants death and decay and loves the smell of burnt flesh and sacrifices and demands sacrifices and demands the destruction of other people, including their kids. I don't see how you can have those same characteristics, and you know what I mean? Doesn't make sense to me. So
it doesn't make sense, and I think that it's a lot of people don't want to hear about this because what they've done is they have taken the Bible and their Christianity and they've turned it into things where they leave these parts of the story out, right? Like Christ died on the cross for us, and now we just get to sing songs, and then we go about our business every day.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what it's like.
Well, what it really gets into is, honestly, and this gets to the superhero movies too and everything, is whenever you take the method of salvation that is within you and you put it on something or a book, a person, an icon outside of yourself, and put your dependence of salvation on it, that's when you're lost. Okay? Yeshua said that the kingdom of heaven is within you. Okay? It's within you. And Yeshua kept trying to tell his followers, he said, look, if you believe that I'm the Messiah and therefore I and the Father, we're one. And me and you are one. And so if that makes me God, it makes you God too. Some of them got it and some of them didn't get it. But it's easy for people to say, all my sins are forgiven, and because I believe that some dude 2,000 years ago got nailed to a cross, I don't really have to do anything. I don't have to do anything, okay? That is why religion is so appealing to people, and that's why they'll fight and kill over it, because it takes the work off of them to do anything.
And not just the work, but it's also what I find in the cellular work that I do and the life coaching that I do is it is very difficult for people to take responsibility for the things that they don't like in their life. It's very easy to blame the parents, which that is the hand down, but then at some point in our lives, we have to change our perception and move forward beyond the indoctrination that has kept us recycling for such a long time. That's a big part of this light is, and I want to go into that. We're going to take a break here in a few minutes, but I want to go into more about the light, because light being knowledge and then light being used in a way, the deception that they used it with Sophia, I feel that's when you said, being recycled, I feel like they use the light to recycle people. When people die and they go into the light, that's when they're being recycled. So again, that deception that they used to trap Sophia in the chaos was of the light. It was the trick of the light, though, right? It wasn't the knowledge of light. It wasn't the frequency of light. It was the deception.
It was a cheap knockoff, yeah.
Bam. And so that's then what became the paradigm of the planet. And that's why the rape culture and all these other things. Well, so Nibiru comes around and does a big clean out. And now, as things got as the parasites were brought to the surface and everything's kind of out in the open, what direction, and we're going to have to take a break, like I said. And so when I come back, I want to hear your idea of what direction things are heading now, right? Because we had this whole idea of a new paradigm and of this and that. And in my opinion, again, it didn't happen. The frequency wasn't high enough on the planet that when Nibiru came around, it did not bump us into another dimensional reality. It just rose the anchors that were keeping us from shifting, which again, that cycle is 36,000 years. So I'd like to hear about what you think is coming, how you think that relates, and if that's true, or if there's something more to what's happening now on the planet.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll be back. Yeah, good. So I picked out and welcome back to Elemental Evolution here on the People's Internet Radio. I hope that if you're joining us in this hour, and weren't here in the last hour, I'll fill you in a little bit. We are here talking with Daniel Lewis Crumpton from Downloaded Content. Hi, Daniel.
Hello.
Hello. We were talking about the Gnostic beliefs and some of the breakdowns of how things are looked at in a, what do you call it, in a structured way, where you've got levels of an archetype.
Mhm.
It's not right.
Yeah, well, first let me say this. If I really had to summarize Gnosticism in any way, it's that we are really into the concept of you create your own reality, right? So,
Right.
which is echoed in the Bible in Romans chapter 14. So it's like, I want to stress to people, I'm not saying, look, this is just how I understand those scriptures and my own firsthand experience. Those scriptures, whether it be the Bible or the Pistis Sophia or the Gospel of Thomas, they just reinforce what I have experienced in my short time in this physical body. Okay? So,
Right.
what the difference between religious thought is that there is one way to experience reality. What Gnosis is that every individual person on this planet that ever existed, will exist, and exists is like a red box of potentiality in existence. Okay? Like if Sherri, if you're experiencing reality in a certain way and I'm drawn towards it, then that is an invitation from you for me to join in your creation of reality. And I am free to dip into it. For example, in magic or in working with your altar or candles or incense, me and you, we do this quite often. I'll say, how do you do such and such for this or that spell? It's not because I'm about to become a Wiccan. It's because I'm backwards engineering your methods and then tweaking it to my own experience. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So it's like, for anybody, this is, I'm not claiming to be an expert on anybody but Daniel Lewis Crumpton. If what I'm saying, you dig it, welcome. If not, go do your own reality. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, back to Sophia, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And especially because now we talked about on the break, and I want to go into this, how basically the relationship between Yeshua and Sophia and what the effects and how that was perceived.
Okay, yeah. Well, Pistis Sophia is a really cool. I love it because, for one thing, it takes place 11 years after the death, burial, and resurrection of, quote, Jesus or Yeshua, right? So, which I think is really cool because most, Orthodox religions don't want you going past that. But basically, it indicates that even after his passion, he's still around in metaphysical bodies or appearances teaching people, right? So when you pick up the Pistis Sophia, it basically, the setting of the story is on the Mount of Olives. I'm pretty sure it's the Mount of Olives, yeah. And he has his disciples, minus Judas, there with Mary Magdalene, Martha, and his mother Mary. And he's basically, the premise of the Pistis Sophia is, hey guys, while I was in the flesh, I taught you all this stuff. And these past 11 years, I've been teaching you more advanced stuff. Now I'm going to teach you even more advanced stuff because ultimately it's you guys, the 12 of you, that are going to exponentiate this wisdom and save the entire world. So that's the setting of the Pistis Sophia. And how it kind of is laid out is Yeshua or Jesus tells this story about Sophia, okay? And after he tells a little bit of the story, he would stop and he would say, okay, which one of you guys wants to kind of interpret that? And of course, Mary Magdalene is the one who says, oh my God, I have to tell you this. This reminds me of what David said in the Psalms. And then she quotes it. And of course, after she quotes from Psalms in relation to what Sophia cried out way beforehand, hang on just a second. Sorry, some inconsiderate person's calling. So he says, you did good. Well, as he goes through every part of the story, his disciples, when they're, when they're inspired to kind of relate what he's saying, they give their 2 bits in. So he tells the story about Sophia falling into chaos, Yaldabaoth being created, the Archons being created, and then he himself, prior to the events of the Garden of Eden, being a presence that is very interested in the fate of Sophia, to the point where I think it's her seventh repentance, he goes down and guides her up. And then he himself goes back to the treasury of light. And it's almost like when I read it, he's tapping his foot because he desperately wants to go down and save Sophia. But at the same time, he has to wait till he's given direct orders from the Most High God, right? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but I also, and tell me if I'm jumping too far ahead, and I'll sit back, but in what I understand, he did it anyway, right?
Well,
Even though he wasn't given permission.
No, he was given permission to go down and help her a little bit. Of course, his passion was to get her completely out, but he had to obey, essentially. So whenever she gets to her final repentance, which is the Archons, and when I read it, of course, I have a vivid imagination because I'm a writer. I can see the intensity of this. It very much reads like a love story. Very, very much so. Because in the narrative of the Pista Sophia, it essentially says that Yeshua, or Jesus, he is the light, the creative light of the Most High in a masculine spacesuit, okay? Which kind of leaves you to assume that Sophia is ultimately going to become the feminine of the creator light, right? And so it's a love story. It's a superhero story. All religions really are. And so whenever she cries her 12th repentance, which is the shortest and most desperate because she's almost completely raped of her light, her wisdom, her power, all of it, is simply just save me. Save me. And at that moment, you get the climax of the story where, the Most High basically tells Yeshua, go get her. Go get your woman, And so he, and you'd have to read it, and I hope that people who read it really do watch superhero movies, because to me, the visuals of it is very much superhero-ish, where he shoots down towards her into chaos, but doesn't go all the way down to save her. What happens in it is when she can see him, and she realizes that it is God itself, the light, encapsulated into a body, all of creation, all of the aeons, all of the gods, all the chiefs, all the rulers, they realize that it also is the light from the treasury, okay, inside of a spacesuit, essentially. Even though it's, Jesus' body, his glorified body, is brilliant and light-filled and powerful, if God itself were to actually interact with material creation would be eviscerated, right? Just can't happen. So, but they realize that it is the actual light of God moving to do something. And when he comes about midway down towards chaos, he takes all of his light essence and shoots it down towards Sophia. And it says that it becomes a wreath of light around her head, or a crown, right? And of course, whenever you hear crowns, either in the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita, and in spiritual stuff, it's talking about, the third eye, the Kundalini, the crown chakra. It's the same stuff, right? So basically, he gives her the light to save herself, right? So Sophia is not some damsel in distress now, right? She made a mistake because of her aspirations, and she suffered greatly for it. And so Yeshua gives her the ability to save herself, okay?
Now that's powerful to me. That seems extremely, because if people, or what we're talking about now with the rising of the feminine, and basically the balance coming back into structure, would be the awakening of Sophia, right? So go ahead.
So basically what happens is, with the light that she gets, she turns towards Yaldabaoth and the Archons. And ultimately she rises above them, okay? And this is what people have referred to as the marriage of the Christ, okay? And it doesn't explicitly say this, but I believe it, is that Sophia became the bride, the feminine counterpart to Yeshua. Okay, so there's your yin, your yang, your goddess, your god. And so both of them at that point in the story were above Yaldabaoth and his influence, or the demiurge, and the influence of the Archons, right? But the story doesn't really end there, because as Yeshua is telling this story to his disciples, basically now there's another problem. And the problem is the light from Sophia that the Archons and Yaldabaoth managed to get is still inside of chaos, okay? And since they can't get any more from Sophia, they have to recycle the light that is in chaos, okay? They have to keep recycling it. And so what Yeshua is telling these people in the Pistis Sophia is that Yaldabaoth and the Demiurge have prevented souls from coming into the world. So that particular text would make a distinction between a spirit and a soul. Because everything that lives and breathes has a spirit, right? Animals have spirits, okay? Anything with the breath of life in it has a spirit. But there's a difference between a spirit and a soul. And this is just me talking, okay? So I'm not trying to build a church. I've got nothing to convert nobody to. I'm just telling you, Sherri, what I pick up when I read it, okay? Which is how you are supposed to approach Gnostic texts. Right. You're supposed to approach it from, what is this saying to me as an individual? And then whenever you get whatever you get from it, don't ever let anybody tell you that you're wrong. They may have stuff that you can add to, but it's your personal thing. That's what personal gnosis is, dipshits. But anyway, so basically, the problem that the texts say is that Yaldabaoth and the Archons are recycling these spirits over and over again through reincarnation. How, to me, it seems that they've been doing this is obviously when your spirit leaves the flesh, there is some type of a scrambling of your memories. There is a mind wipe. And so you keep referencing, don't go to the light, and you'll hear people here who are like in New Age circles saying that the light is a deception. I would agree. I would say that they have, through a cycle within our solar system, created a method, a technological method, to, when a spirit departs from the flesh, to reroute where it's supposed to go. It's my personal belief. This happens with Saturn and our moon, all right? That Saturn acts as a slingshot, essentially, okay? And sends the spirit, back into proximity of Mother Earth, where at some point you're still conscious of your life, your linear life, but your memories are going to be rearranged. But there's always this thing with free will, okay? And the Matrix movies really talk about this great with the architect. He says that when they created the Matrixes prior, they failed because they completely eliminated free will, and it didn't take. So what they had to do was devise a system where they could keep recycling human beings with just the most minimal amount of free will. But they had to account for free will for the equation to balance, okay? Does that make sense?
It does, and it also, yes, it does, but keep going, and then I'll add in what I know about the free will part. Go ahead.
So with free will, whenever you have to come back and reincarnate, you are, in my opinion, allowed to set breadcrumbs for yourself in your next incarnation. I believe that you do have a lot of free will on what parents you're born to, what circumstances you're born to, what major events in your life. I believe that you personally pick those before you get here, to give yourself a shot, because that would account for free will. I can't prove that, you know what I'm saying? And for anybody to ask for proof from metaphysical realms, they're completely, I'm sorry, but that's fucking dipshit type thinking, okay? You can't take something from seventh dimension and then make it manifest in 4 dimensions, you know what I mean? So to ask for metaphysical proof in the physical world is kind of stupid, but that's just me. So I believe that, when you're getting ready to reincarnate, you're allowed to set up tentpole events in your life. Maybe somebody comes into your life with a certain tattoo, a certain symbol, a certain book, a certain album, a certain movie that makes you go, wait a second, things are not quite what they seem to be. Or deja vu, or maybe an unlocking of past lives, okay? That, in my opinion, allows enough free will so that if a person doesn't cultivate a soul in this incarnation, there's always the opportunity to cultivate your soul to escape samsara, or the cycle of death and rebirth, okay? That there is always that option, but not everybody takes the option in a particular linear lifetime. And that's where reincarnation comes in. And Pista Sophia agrees with me, where Yeshua is telling them that Yaldabaoth and the Archons have prevented souls from coming. Well, what would my definition of a soul would be is a light being who has been through material existences that has a memory and an awareness of the greater existence and never forgot, or at least won't forget from the moment they cultivate their soul onwards. Like people who have near-death experiences, I don't believe they're near-death experiences. I believe they are death experiences. You walk through a door, right? Tie-in string theory, quantum theory, and all that good stuff. But whenever they have this awakening, this Kundalini awakening, which typically happens around a moment of great trauma or near-death experience, they some of them haven't quite put their finger on the fact that they've died yet, that they actually just stepped over into another frequency of reality, a dimension where the characters who were in their previous life are still there, and life seemingly is going along the way it was, with minor tweaks, right? And then over time, they become aware, wait a second, I don't think I walked away from that car accident. Or could I really have come up from out of the water that long? Or did that butcher knife really go through my skull? Things like that, right? So basically that's what the Pista Sophia is talking about, is that Yaldabaoth and the Archons have kept people in this cycle, and it was the job of the enlightened, the 12, to move towards allowing people to cultivate their spirits into souls, right? You with me?
I am, but still without, I'm sorry, I was talking again, but it's still without consciousness, right? I mean, I feel like you look around the planet now, and yes, there is some of this coming up, but it still seems like we have a lot of bottom feeders that are continuing to feed into that vibration that keeps us in the trap because of the collective idea, right? If all are one and all are connected to the one source of either Sophia, whatever people believe, it somehow is keeping even those who, I guess, are recognizing and lifting consciousness. Do you think, okay, so instead of saying that this is what is happening, let me ask you, do you feel that that's what is continuing or even allowing the trap to be there at all anymore? Because it would seem that it would dissipate or go away once a certain level of consciousness was there.
No, I don't personally believe that. I personally believe that the video game of the material existence is always going to exist, because life itself, existence itself, is basically an infinite choice of video games or simulations for God to play. If you are expecting to go to your highest metaphysical heights once everybody else does, you're never going to get there. We have to coexist with people on different frequencies, just like angels, archangels, and all that other stuff. Aeons exist in the same existence as mortal men. Okay, so if people who are on the path of Gnosis or enlightenment or whatever think that one day the global system is going to go away, then I don't think that's the best way to look at it. It's that school is always going to be there for spirits, for young spirits to have to experience. However, you can operate on a different frequency. Me and you, Sherri, we operate on a different frequency, a higher frequency than 80% of the people on the planet. But we live in their world. And it's just like Jesus said, be in the world, but not of the world. To a good bit of people who do what?
It's not always easy.
No, it's not always easy. And what's when it becomes not easy is when we allow them to pull us into it, into their reality, and then we kind of forget, oh, wait a second, I'm a spiritual being. Okay, first and foremost, I'm a spiritual person, and I get my guidance from the metaphysical. Okay, and really, when we really get involved with people, that's why I love going into periods of isolation. okay, where I could just turn off the internet, shut my doors, and really just be in my imagination, which is the kingdom of God, and really do my work there. And then go back online, do more radio shows, publish more articles, publish more books, and have to deal with other people of other frequencies, but not so long to where I get lost, right? Not so long to where I get lost, or somebody else out there invites me into their reality, and then I just become absorbed within it, right?
Right.
That's why I think that there should always be times of solitude, to build your own memory palace, build your own temple, and be the god of that temple, right? The spirit within you. Like, for example, when I tell people about, my beliefs, the ones who don't want to crucify me or burn me, they go, "Oh, I like that," and then they adopt it into their belief structure. That's fun, that's great. If I see you with a certain spell or a certain ritual, and I see that it's useful and I understand it, it's not necessarily the method that you're
Right.
using. It's the intent of it, okay? And we have to do that, like with people of the world, like with money is a big one for people. The whole thing between cryptocurrency, paper currency, it's all fiat, okay? Money in itself is nothing but imagination, okay? The material world is there as a result of consciousness. It's not the other way around, right? And people who are operating at a higher spiritual frequency, if you just have to maintain that. You have to, get a tattoo of it or something on your wrist. I don't know. That basically says the material world is there because I think. Okay, I think, therefore I am. Right?
That's right.
Consciousness creates matter,
But
and
here's the thing that I want to add to that, because this is what a lot of people will use the things that they don't understand as a point against the idea of manifesting their own reality, because there are different levels of consciousness. Like what we're talking about, when you're pulling yourself to a level of consciousness where you're vibrating, where you're recognizing and watching your consciousness from the outside, but still staying and being present on the inside. That's the dynamic that we're talking about. But when you're talking about these frequencies and the projection, most people on the planet right now, I'd say at least 80%, are living in that consciousness of the subconscious, right? So the things that they hold within them that they're not aware of, like blinking your eyes, right, are actually the things running their reality and creating and manifesting what they're seeing and experiencing.
yeah, and what the Gnostic Gospels will say is those are spirits. They're not cultivated souls, like an animal. They're on automatic. They're operating out of the subconscious for methods of survival, right? So
Exactly.
whenever you've cultivated a spirit or a light body, or you've done the Kundalini or whatever, you are way more aware. You're still susceptible to fall, right? Just like angels, right? The fall of the angels and stuff. You're susceptible to that, but it's just daily repetition and daily exercise of staying at the spiritual frequency that you wish to stay at. There's a great book. It's called the Kabbalion by, they say it's from Hermes Trismegistus, that talks about rising above the laws of karma, which ultimately Gnosticism talks about that. It talks about, in the Pistis Sophia, there's an episode where Yeshua turns into Superman. He goes into his Superman body and goes up to the zodiac. And look, every now and then I check my horoscope, okay? And there are a lot of people who are still governed by the zodiac. But in the Pistis Sophia, if you read it, he goes up and it says that he takes the zodiac and he spins it one way for 6 months and spins it the other way for 6 months and takes the other half and spins it. Basically, it's saying that for those of us who are cultivated spirits, the laws of the horoscope no longer affect us because the zodiac is a matter of fate. And
Well,
spiritual beings are above fate because you
Exactly.
create your own fate. Okay?
And that's the difference from the subconscious and those linear repeated lifetimes and to the time of now. And that's, I think it was 2 years ago that I started spouting the age of karmic debt is over, right? But this is the breakdown of what I was saying. Go
Well,
ahead.
look at karma. Karma is the law of cause and effect, right?
Exactly, but it's deeper than that, because
Well,
it doesn't have to be, people can do grand things, but if they have ill intentions, the karmic debt is still created,
well,
or vice versa.
the law of karma, or the law of cause and effect, reaping and sowing, is dependent upon the material. Okay? So, if the goal is to rise above karma, you have to transcend the material world. And you'll get a lot of Christian apologists who, the Gnostics are evil because they think that the material creation is evil. That's not necessarily what Gnostics believe. Gnostics believe that the material world is a trap. It can trap you in the law of karma, cause and effect. But when you begin living in a more metaphysical and spiritual frequency, you rise above the material world. And I think the whole allegory of Jesus walking on water is a parable to demonstrate the balancing of karma and dharma. Jesus walking on the water is to me illustrating that he has risen above the law of matter and cause and effect. Okay, that's just kind of what I pick up from it.
Okay.
But in the Kabbalion talks about karma, or cause and effect being like a pendulum. That whatever the height of your experience here on Earth is, it's going to swing the opposite way, an equal and opposite pole, right? And that sucks, because for somebody like me, I have great moments of enlightenment and joy and laughter, and with the knowledge that this is going to swing back the other way, that means I'm going to go to the deepest, darkest pits of hell, and that sucks. And I have gone through that, And with the Kabbalion, it teaches you how to actually find a place on the upswing and neutralize it so it stays put. Okay? So that you find your greatest joy or ecstasy and fulfillment and enlightenment. When you're at the height of the swing, the Kabbalion will kind of walk you through how to keep it fixed right there, right? So in Gnostic thought or spiritual thought, that is transcending the material cause and effect. So you're in the world, but you're not of the world, right? And you act as an angel for those people who still haven't gotten it yet. An angel is just a messenger, right? And it's my belief that, whenever you do cultivate a soul, if you have a death experience or your material body, one, you don't feel it, but two, you maintain your memories. You maintain the essence of who, say, Sherri is, or who Daniel is, and then you just go wherever you're supposed to go next without forgetting. You've escaped samsara. You're in nirvana. You can come and go through the gates of heaven and hell, or heaven and the material world, as you see fit. And I think it happens all the time. And that's another thing about reincarnation and reoccurrence. People think that people who haven't really read the Bible, they don't realize that the person of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene have appeared prior to that incarnation several times. Because in Pistis Sophia, one of the things that's heavily hinted at is, and I'm of the belief, and I'm not alone, that Mary Magdalene was the bride of Christ, okay? They were married. They had a kid, if not more kids. But in the Pistis Sophia, it's very heavily hinted that what Christ is really, or Yeshua is really trying to bring to Mary Magdalene's awareness is that she, in fact, is Sophia in another incarnation. And she almost gets to that conclusion, but she just falls short. And then Mary, the mother of Jesus, kind of pushes it over, and she's like, Mary, do you get it? You are Sophia, right? So the concept of the goddess and the god and them reincarnating and returning, you can superimpose that on any story. So it's not like all these conspiracy theorists believe. There's a group of people in Hollywood, like with Spider-Man, that are intentionally putting this stuff in there to brainwash you. No, these elements of our reality are just coming to the surface and surrounding us like a mirror to remind us this is a reflection of who you are, who you really are, and the path that you're really supposed to be on, right? And like when we started this, Spider-Man was a huge indicator of that. Anybody who's seen it, to kind of point it out, there are three main parts to that movie that I would suggest people really pay attention to, okay? Or four. One is the fact that he's Spider-Man, and me and you had talked about this previously. Spider-Man comes from a Native American thing. I don't think Stan Lee knew that. I don't think Stan Lee intentionally did that. It's just because it's in the collective consciousness, it came forth through Spider-Man. But there's a Native American myth about the Spider-Woman weaving the web of reality, and the Spider-Man, or the hero of the story, having to climb up into her web, right? So, Spider-Man, there's that. The second one is, in this version of the movie, Homecoming, he's almost afraid of heights, which is weird. You're accustomed to him being on skyscrapers, but you never see him on skyscrapers in this movie. And one of the first places that you find Spider-Man is on the Washington Monument, and he has to climb the Washington Monument, and he's scared as hell, and he says, I've never been up this high before, okay? And he actually grabs hold of the capstone, or the pyramid, on the top of the Washington Monument. You following me?
Sorry, yes, I am.
Okay,
So
so
he grabs hold of the pyramid. No, but keep going with that, because even though I get the symbolism in some ways, the after of that is probably crucial.
exactly. Now, if we want to superimpose Kundalini on this, the pyramid is the pineal gland. It is the third eye. It is right before apotheosis, godhood, right? It is where, if you're doing physical Kundalini, raising the cerebral spinal fluid from the sacrum, which is at the base of the spinal column, up the 33 vertebrae. So the Washington Monument is indicating the spinal column. Spider-Man is the Christ. He's the oil. And he finally reaches back up to the pineal gland. Anybody who's done the process of Kundalini through yoga or meditation or whatever, this is the process that you have to take. You have to get the cerebral spinal fluid alkalinized. You have to get it to raise back up from the sacrum bone through your chakra points. Open up Gray's Anatomy or Stedman's Medical Dictionary. This isn't fucking voodoo. This is anatomy. It's in your body, okay? As above, so below. As within, so without. So Spider-Man, or the Christ, has to climb back up to the pineal gland, the third eye. It shows you in the movie that he is grasping the Philosopher's Stone, the pyramid, the all-seeing eye. And he's scared because he says, I've never been this high. And there's a chopper behind him, or imminent death, and he has to, in order to save his friends who are stuck in the elevator shaft inside the spinal column, he has to do something that's going to probably kill him. And he even says, I'm going to die. Because if you go through Kundalini and you do this process, you have to do that. That is the final mystery of the initiation of the pyramid, death. You have to face death and go through death.
Clarify that it's because it's death of the ego. And so when people talk about, when Christ or when God said, oh, you shall perish, this is different than that, because the death of the ego is the idea, it's the matrix, it's the connection of the title of anything that brings you into separation.
I don't believe in killing the ego. That's just me, man. I do not believe that you're supposed to I believe that you're supposed to incorporate your ego with your higher self. Because look, Peter Parker, we'll just use this as an analogy. Peter Parker is the ego, Spider-Man is the higher self. You can't have one without the other. Okay? I don't believe that you're supposed to destroy the ego. I believe that you're supposed to individuate the ego, in my opinion. Okay? But
I guess it's the definition of ego, because here's the thing for me, and this is a lot of what I'm going through in my own experience, is that the titles that we hold in the Matrix, the things that they have indoctrinated us with, that's ego. It's not the self. It's not the recognition of consciousness or the ability to manifest. That's to me, that's different. So anyway, we don't have to go into that whole thing, but I want to clarify that there's a big difference in what people conceive as ego and what the ego that's on the outside of the box is.
Yeah, I mean, that's just me. I don't believe that you're supposed to transcend the ego. I think you're supposed to individuate it. But if you don't mind, let me stick to the Spider-Man thing because it's great. So,
Yeah.
So whenever he does make this leap of faith over death, he does save his friends in the elevator shaft, okay? But ultimately, he falls back down the elevator shaft himself. And of course, he doesn't die. But this is the movie showing you the process whenever you're going through apotheosis or, becoming a god, which is the whole point of it all. This is not heretical to say that, except for a few limited people who don't believe that they can become a god. But the movie is showing you in order that the ego has created another identity. Spider-Man has to go to the heights of the pineal gland or the third eye and then go back down into Galilee or down the shaft, okay? The next great feat that you see Spider-Man doing in this particular movie is, in order to save the world, so to speak, he's on a ferry that's coming from Staten Island. And if you've seen the trailers, this isn't going to ruin the movie. You've seen it. In order to save everybody, he has to web up this boat that's being ripped in half, right? Left and right hemisphere. What I also find ironic is that he has to do it with a web. And if you open up Grey's Anatomy and you see in between the left and right hemisphere, there is something called the arachnid web in between the left hemisphere of the brain and the right hemisphere of the brain, the veil. Okay? So there is a spider web in between the two hemispheres of this boat. And whenever he's, quote, 95% successful, something starts to go wrong. And in order for him to keep the left and right hemisphere together, you see that he has to spread his arms in the form of the cross. You seen it? Right?
I posted that picture. That's the picture that I used for the ad.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
He has to become the solar hero and sacrifice himself, or at least be willing to sacrifice himself together to hold the ship together. And it shows you. I mean, that's obvious. There clearly was a Gnostic that said, put him on a cross. Because this is not the first time that they've done this with a Spider-Man movie, showed Spider-Man in the form of the crucifix. Okay? So, in the process of the hero's journey, he touches the Philosopher's Stone, he goes down back into Galilee, he is then put up on a cross in between the two hemispheres, separated by a arachnid web. The next big thing is that he's stripped of his advantage over mortal men in this movie, which happens to be this high-tech suit that was given to him by Tony Stark. Okay? Yes, he has powers on his own, but the suit certainly enhanced his powers, right? This technology.
Saw that, and I had never seen that before.
Right. So he is stripped of his powers, okay? His powers being amplified. And anybody who's practiced yoga or meditation, they know that you go through this process where you start to manifest supernatural abilities, and you're like, this is cool, and then at some point, it's taken away from you, and you don't know why. And you feel that you've messed up, right? You're no longer to, say, be empathic. You're no longer to heal through touch. You're no longer able to read other people's minds, right? It's just taken away from you. And you can still feel like a little bit of it, but you don't have it anywhere near like you used to have it. So that's the process in this story. The next big part of the hero's journey is when he goes to face the villain of the movie without his enhanced ability, in regards to the suit, he is buried underneath tons and tons and tons of concrete. And not only was it a great moment for the actor, it was just it rips your heart out because he's trapped underneath it. He finally becomes a 15-year-old kid and he starts crying. And I'm talking about, it does rip your heart out because he's begging for help. And Tom Holland is an excellent actor, man, and I'm so glad they found that kid, and I hope he sticks around forever because he really, really did a good job. But what is the story trying to tell you? This is the dark night of the soul, man. This is you with no help underneath the weight of the world in absolute darkness. And your whole, I'm super spiritual and all your superpowers are for nothing. And there is no help anywhere, right? And at that point in the movie of the hero's journey, where you're in the dark night of the soul, he hears his mentor or his father figure, Tony Stark, say, if you're nothing without the suit, then you don't deserve the suit, right? And that loneliness, that darkness, the pressure that's on him makes him reach inside and say, okay, Spider-Man, you can do this. So now he's not referring to his ego, Peter Parker. He's referring to who he knows he is on the inside, really, which is Spider-Man. And then without any supersuit, without any help whatsoever, when he calls on the name of Spider-Man and claims that identity as his own, primarily, then he can lift the weight of the world. And then he goes on to save the day, you know what I'm saying? So is this movie heavily esoteric and Gnostic? Very much so. Did they intentionally do that? I don't know. I just think that it's because we on the collective level are feeling this, that it's coming out in our art, in our movies, in our music, in our literature, and I don't think it has a choice. It's staring us in the face, so that those of us who are ready can apply what we're seeing to our own life path and look for connections with these stories to help us along, right? So there's a ton of, and I only saw it once. I'm probably going to go back and see it like 20 more times and pick up a lot more. But just off the top of my head, those 4 big tent poles of the movie is the hero's journey that anybody can kind of, once you identify with the character of Spider-Man and go, okay, this is really a story about me. Let's go beat by beat on his big moments, which is, you do your yoga, which is union with God. You touch the pinnacle or the third eye, then you're gonna go to a fall. You're gonna have a fall. You're gonna have a dark night of the soul where there is no hope. But this is all a part of the plan, and so you have to reach within. You have to identify with your highest self, the identity of who you created, that not the world created, that you created, and then rise up. Okay, so don't freak out when you're on any point of this story and think you're doing something wrong. You're not. You're on the path, and this is a part of the path. And especially in the dark night of the soul, man, because when you meet people who are in that part of their story, it's tough because it's like there's no hope, but you got to encourage them a little bit and be like, look, dude, I cannot help you out of this mess, because if I help you out of this mess, what I'm actually doing is not helping you out of this mess. And you'll have to repeat your dark night of the soul until you yourself climb out. And me and you know people like that, Sherri, who, I had a friend that I've recently met that knows that I have superhero syndrome, and she said, you need to retire some of that shit, because you see people who are almost at their dark night of the soul, and then you feel so much empathy for them, and you swing in and you save them, and what you've actually done is you've delayed them becoming a superhero themselves, and you can't sometimes.
Codependency, right?
Huh?
The codependency of being the hero in the Matrix series, right?
Right. You have to, if you're wanting to, what's the whole point of Christians or Christianity is to create other Christs or Christians, right? Well, they're going to have to go through the process of death, burial, and resurrection individually on a personal level. So, can you, I know this is it's like a skit from Mad TV, but it's funny and it's true, where the Terminator has to go back in time and kill Judas, and every time he pulls a shotgun out and blows Judas away, Jesus is like, damn it, stop. This has got to happen, right? But the Terminator's a machine. He doesn't get it. He's like, no, I must save you, whatever. And Christ is like, dude, I have to get on the cross. You got to leave me, stop. That's how we have to, people who are on a spiritual path that are in the dark night of the soul, you got to let them die sometimes. You really do have to. You have to use wisdom on if it's their time or not, but you have to let them be destroyed. And if they make it, they make it. And if they don't, they don't. But if they do, something brilliant and beautiful will come out of it. So, yeah, the hero's journey. Another aspect of the hero's journey, and this may be spoilerish, but at the end of the movie, Peter Parker basically earns the favor of his father figure, which in this instance would represent God to him, which is Tony Stark, Iron Man, right? And this may spoil it, so sorry. But at the end of it, after Peter Parker's been through his trial, Tony Stark basically offers him a seat at the high table. He offers him the opportunity to become a full-fledged god, if you will, and join the Avengers, right? To shake off the cares of his life back in Queens, New York, and to sit with the Avengers, right? So there is this opportunity and this invitation to join the gods. And spoiler, Peter Parker turns it down. And he says, you know, I appreciate it, Mr. Stark, but I'm gonna keep being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And then he goes back to Queens, New York to look out for the little guys. Why? Because it's the gods or the Avengers' job to deal with cosmic situations. And if everybody on the metaphysical path is dealing with the big cosmic things, who is left to look after the neighborhood cat or the neighborhood senior citizen, right? So what Peter Parker chooses to do is to swing back with everything that he's gained, all the knowledge, the resources, the power, to swing back into the material world to watch over the humans. And that would be people like you and me. We have touched the divine. We've been offered a chance to get out of here. And on some level, we said, but who's going to look out for the little guy? And so we've consciously made a choice to stay in the world but not be of the world. Because we know that at any minute, when we get fed up with, catching muggers and stopping, people from stealing bicycles and stuff, we know that we can always go and hang out with the Avengers whenever we want to. So overall, Spider-Man Homecoming was brilliant, in that essence, that I hear a lot of these metaphysical people talking about, I just can't wait to get out of here, and I don't want to ever incarnate again. And it's like, dude, you're missing it, man. You're missing what you're here for. You're here to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, So enjoy that for a while before you go to Avengers Tower or whatever.
Well, that's part of it. I mean, I think that's a huge piece of the learning, because learning to manifest, which that's been my deal for a couple years now, is part of that superhero ability, right? Being able to use the magic that I learned as a child, but pushing it beyond symbolism and the limitations of what we are taught in this reality. That's a huge piece of, if everyone can just step outside their box for 2 seconds a day, they'll find that the box, like you were saying earlier, is not even real.
Right. Yeah, it's all, all of creation, honestly, look, God is one ultimately, Sherri, okay? And God is one, God's not male or female. All that is within God. And so, ultimately, if you really stop and think about it, God is lonely. Because there is nothing like God, and there is no spot where God is not. So, ultimately, everything, even if we perceive it to be bad, is created for God's good pleasure, for God's, for the purpose of God to forget himself or itself for a little bit and experience and learn about itself, right? So, everything is a simulation. It's all a game. It's all a video game. And, people get caught up in games, and they put so much emotional investment in it that they forget that it is just a game. Everything is just like Bill Hicks said. This is a ride. It's all a ride. And some people flip out, and, because it's the first time they've been on the ride. And some people, they're like, in the line, and they've done it several times, and they keep saying, chill out. It's just a ride. This experience called life is what you make it, man. And so I have made a conscious choice to stay away from people who are negative for, prolonged periods of time, or who believe that we're all doomed, or that that there is some all-powerful cabal, that, yeah, sure, there are power-hungry people. They're not all-powerful, right? And their food is my attention to them. And so I just, like, for example, who's our president now?
That would be Donald Trump. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So see, that's where I'm at. You know what I'm saying? That is, if there are some people who watch Young and the Restless, and that is their reality, and because and it is, it's that show dictates their life, and that's fine. That's just what they've chosen. So choose your own reality. You know what I'm saying? And if you're not happy with the reality that's around you, look at the other people whose stories you're co-creating with, and it may suck for a minute, but say, I don't really think I dig being in this other person's story. Writers have a thing, we writers, never give the pen of your life to somebody else. If you're not digging the way that your experience is playing out, look at whoever it is in your life that is narrating for you more than you, and get your damn pen back, man. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. I love that. And that is huge, because taking your pen back is all part of taking responsibility, manifesting your own reality, but also a huge point that I think you've made several times is not feeding that negative side of this reality is what starves it to death. And unfortunately, Daniel, this 2 hours has gone by so fast. We've got about 3 minutes left, so I'd like you to have a minute to tell people where they can find you, where they can listen, and about downloaded content and all of those things.
Oh, sure. Yeah, my webpage is downloadedcontent.com. You can find my novel, Then Came the Flood there. The first 3 chapters, people can read that and pick it up there. That book, by the way, has been sent to Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis, so I'm probably going to be on their show in the next month or so. And I anticipate that book blowing up a lot. So if you want to get in on it before it blows up, that'd be great. I do the Downloaded Content podcast, which is on break right now, sort of. I guess this is a podcast because it will be. People can listen to that on iTunes and Google Play and all that good stuff. Everything's at downloadedcontent.com. And regarding medicinal cannabis, for people who know, I am a caregiver for CannaSense. And if you don't know anything about CannaSense, or if you're looking to get sponsored into a program that can get you legal access to cannabis for medicinal purposes in all 50 states, go to downloadedcontent.com. Click on the CannaSense Total Wellness page. There's a tutorial video. There's also a form you can fill out if you want me or some of my team members to contact you to get you into CannaSense. Me and you are big cannabis activists, so there's that. But yeah, there's 4 new videos that I put up about CannaSense and how to become a member there. But yeah, everything's at downloadedcontent.com. You can find me there and everything that I do there. The podcast, the articles, the serial novels, the novels, everything. Join my cult.
Rock it.
Join my cult.
I really appreciate the knowledge that you bring to a lot of people. I know it's hard for certain ideas that you bring to the table, digestion in the beginning, but again, I do appreciate the fact that you just keep planting the seeds no matter who's listening and no matter who believes you. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a huge part of integrity and us moving forward in the collective reality, because like you said, that's what we're here to do, is expand the horizon for people to be able to see and heal themselves.
Hey, look, ultimately we're leaving breadcrumbs for people behind us, and that's all I can do. So I'm not about arguing with other people about doctrine and dogma and scriptures and stuff. Look, I got to go. I got other people who will pick it up and get towards happiness and joy.
That's it, too. That's it. And you just hit it exactly right. Let's live there. And it's time to go. Thank you, Daniel, so much. I hope you all enjoyed, and we'll see you next weekend.
Downloaded Content Podcast. Download.